Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto joins Fairy Tail after Tenrou Island. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Plasma Assassin and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. 14-year-old Naruto Uzumaki stared up at the large guild hall. Home to his hero and all-time favorite mage of all time, Ezra Scarlet. Walking up to the doors, which were about 7 to 8 times taller than him, made him feel extremely nervous. Shaking his head and slapping both of his whispered cheeks, he pushed one of the large doors open. Slipping inside the guild hall, he saw it was fairly quiet. A couple people sitting around and amicably talking. Looking around, the young teen walked up to the bar where he saw a purple-haired girl cleaning a beer mug while humming a slight tune to herself. "Hey miss, where's the guild master?" he asked while peering over the guild bar on his tiptoes, silently grumbling about his height. "Oh, hello? I'm not quite sure where Mikao-san is. I'm Kinana," though she smiled and stuck her hand out. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. But who's Mikao? I thought the guild master was Makarov?" Naruto asked while shaking her hand. "Makarov is our master. He's just on a trip with most of our guild right now, so I'm the pseudo-master of Fairy Tail while he's gone." "The name's Mikao Cobalt, by the way," a somewhat elderly voice said from behind Naruto. Turning around, the teen saw a man with a purple beard and slicked back purple hair. "Him and some guild members are gone? Did Ezra Scarlet go with him?" he asked Mikao. "Yes, she did. Were you hoping to get an autograph or something, kid?" he asked while tilting his head to the side. "That would be awesome. But I'm actually here because I want to join Fairy Tail, Databeo," he said proudly, his expression quickly morphing into horror as he realized his verbal tics slipped into his sentence. The two adults seemed to realize he hadn't meant to say that last part, and started laughing, making him turn red in embarrassment. "So, you want to join Fairy Tail?" Mikao asked after calming down. "What magic do you use, kid?" he asked curiously. "Requip. Urza inspired me to be a mage. Though my requip style isn't as good as hers," he said, starting out confident and ending up meek. "How so?" Kinana asked curiously. "I can only requip weapons or miscellaneous items. So, I can't boost attributes or anything like that," he admitted shamefully. "Hey, that's still a pretty good magic," Kinana said, in a rush to try and cheer the boy up. "She's not wrong, you know. Now, I have a question for you, kid. Where does true strength come from?" Mikao asked seriously. Naruto was silent for a moment, a memory running through his mind. "Where does your strength come from?" an effeminate boy asked him while they sat in a field of flowers. "I dunno. My muscles and magic, I guess," Naruto responded. "That's certainly a good answer," the effeminate boy laughed. "Would you like to know where I believe true strength comes from?" Naruto tilted his head in confusion but nodded. "I believe true strength comes from protecting something precious to you," he said, his brown eyes staring directly into Naruto's. Blue eyes widened as the true meaning of those words impacted Naruto with surprising force. Something about those words resonating with him on a deep level. The 14-year-old teen took a deep breath. "I believe that true strength comes from protecting something truly precious to you," Naruto answered seriously. Kinana and Mikao both looked at the teen in surprise. Though a few moments later, Mikao couldn't keep the megawatt grin off his face. "Welcome to Fairy Tail, kid. Where would you like your mark? And in what color?" "Wait. I'm in? Just like that?" Naruto asked suspiciously. "Yep," Kinana said with a pop in the P. "Yes. Ha! This is the best day of my life, Databeo," Naruto said excitedly while hopping around. The two adults couldn't help but laugh and smile at his enthusiasm. "Yes. Yes. Now where would you like your mark?" Mikao asked, getting Naruto to stop jumping around and scratch the back of his head sheepishly. "Sorry. On my right forearm," and in red, Naruto said while holding his right arm out. The entire time that Kinana was pressing the stamp down on his arm, he couldn't stop smiling like a lunatic. When she finally pulled up and he saw the mark, he couldn't help but cheer once again. Nay. "So, when does the rest of Fairy Tail get back?" he asked Kinana while sitting at the bar. "Well, you actually only missed them by about 2 to 3 hours," she admitted sheepishly, "so it'll be another few days before they get back." Naruto's head met the bar with a resounding thud, scaring Kinana greatly. "I just had to be lazy this morning and not get out of my sleeping bag," he grumbled, getting a laugh from Mikao as he walked up to grab a beer. "Yeah. Life can be a bitch like that," he commented whimsically. "Actually, where do I stay?" "I don't have a place here," Naruto said while raising his head up from the bar. "Ah. The new member woes. Kinana, the basement has a bed, doesn't it?" the pseudo-master of Fairy Tail asked. "It does, but it's really not comfortable," she replied nervously. "That's fine. I'll only be here a few days. I'll do some missions and get a house for myself," Naruto said confidently. "Quite a lot of confidence you have there, kid. How about you go and get to know everyone? Maybe one of them could even take you on a mission today," he suggested. The teen smiled foxily and mock saluted before hopping off his stool and walking over to the nearest table with people at it. Naruto was currently laughing while playing a card game with Romeo, Mikao's son. So far with his ridiculous luck, he was easily beating Romeo, but he did make sure to go easy on the kid. though not too easy. As he was about to take his turn, he felt someone tap his shoulder. Turning around, he saw the green hair and smiling face of Biska. Oh. Hey, be Biska, right? Sorry. I'm bad with names, Naruto greeted with a sheepish grin. Well, it is Biska, so you don't have anything to worry about, she giggled anyway. I heard you wanted to go on a mission? I wouldn't mind taking you on one, she offered. Sure. I'd love to come, Date, he said excitedly before cutting himself off and slamming his head onto the table. Naruto? Biska asked in confusion. Goddamn, stupid verbal tick, he muttered before sliding out of his seat. Sorry, Romeo, we'll have to continue later. The kid only laughed and waved back. So, what are we doing? Naruto asked, walking up to the green-haired gunslinger. A simple monster extermination. It's just a high C-rank mission, she said, showing him the poster. Biska and Naruto sat atop a tree branch while looking down at the nest of giant snakes. I hate snakes, Naruto growled while staring at all of them. You aren't the only one, Biska said with a slight shiver. We're just lucky we aren't facing any magic serpents. Those things are like agile tanks. Naruto shivered heavily at the thought of magic serpents. Anyway, I'm a long-range fighter. So, you don't mind if I provide sniper support? She asked her younger partner. That's fine. I'm more suited to close range anyway, he said in response. With that said and done, Biska grabbed her sniper off her back and began to set it up, checking that everything was clean and undamaged. Looking over, she saw Naruto with a look of intense concentration as he slowly brought his hands apart, a katana forming between his palms. When he was finally done, 3 minutes later, he held a beautiful katana with a fairly plain handle and blade, if it weren't for the red edge of the blade. Looking over and seeing Biska staring at him made him curl into himself slightly and blush. I'm sorry. I'm not the greatest at quickly using my magic, he admitted shyly. Don't worry. I'm sure you'll get there. Especially if Urza teaches you. She already had her swaps down to 30 seconds at your age, she said, in an attempt to cheer him up by proving how capable Urza was with Requip. Instead, all she did was make Naruto flinch, being reminded of exactly how weak he was. Especially compared to his hero. His blonde hair shadowed his eyes as he stood up. I'm going in, now, he said in a monotonous voice while jumping off the branch and into the nest. Naruto? Biska asked in confusion and worry at his sudden change in demeanor. Looking through her sniper scope, she got to see his opening attack. Landing on a snake's head and rolling down its body while cutting it with the katana, each cut causing its body to burn and char from the red part of the now glowing blade edge. By the time the teen had reached the ground, not only had the snake succumbed to its injuries, but it had also alerted the other 15 to 20 or so snakes in the nest, who all stared at Naruto hungrily. The tense atmosphere was broken by a gunshot which hit a snake in the eye, the powerful round instantly liquefying its brain and killing it. With that, the rest of the snakes attacked the teen within their nest. Knowing that killing one now would be extra difficult, he kept all his senses on high alert as he rolled out of the way of one while slicing its side. Naruto then began to bounce between all the snakes as Biska provided support / covering fire on the snakes. Eventually, the multitude of injuries began to wear down some of the snakes enough that they could be killed. All in all, it took about 45 minutes to completely kill all of the snakes. Naruto covered in dirt and a few scratches and bruises, though his breathing was nearly perfectly even. Climbing out of the nest, he was met with the concerned look of Biska, who helped him up. Are you okay? You look hurt, she said while checking him over. I'm fine, just a few flesh wounds, he said, brushing off the injuries easily. Are you sure? Some of these bruises look nasty, she said, looking at a particular one of his chests. Yeah. I'm fine. Ah man. Now I have to get new clothes, he complained at seeing the state his clothing was in. With a heavily damaged shirt and moderately damaged pants, I'm sure the pay for this mission will be enough that you can go clothes shopping, Biska laughed. Over the next few days found Naruto going on missions with multiple people, also becoming friends with a few of them. Within the guild he was always either talking to people or training out the back, trying to make his requip faster and stronger, though right now he was standing in front of the mission board, trying to find a mission that he could do solo, wanting to finally do one without a teammate. As he was looking at them though, the massive doors behind him were blown open and a frightened man scrambled inside, catching everyone's attention. Everyone! Tenrou Island has been destroyed, he screamed. The entire guild now giving him their undivided attention. What do you mean? What happened? Are the others okay? Mikao asked while jogging over to the man. It was a dragon. Scales black as night. It blew it up with one breath. He yelled. What about the others? Mikao yelled back. They're dead, the man said somberly. The entire guild was shocked into pure silence. Mikao's grip on the man's shoulders loosened to almost nothing as those words repeated over and over inside his head. They're dead? He asked numbly. I'm sorry, the man said before running out of the guild hall. The doors slowly sliding closed behind him. Once he left, the guild erupted into noise. Some crying, some yelling out denials, others screaming in rage and sadness. Naruto though was staring ahead numbly, the implications repeating through his head over and over. His hands began to tremble, and his eyes began to sting. Though he refused to cry, he refused to break his promise and cry. Turning back to the board, he grabbed the first flyer he could find and walked over to the bar. Seeing Kinana on the ground sobbing made a spark of anger ignite in him. Grabbing the stamp and book, he filled out his name and the mission himself before slamming the stamp down so hard that the bar cracked. Hearing the crack, a few members looked over, one of which being Alzak, who was comforting Biska. "Naruto?" he asked cautiously. As Naruto turned around, the sharpshooter saw the numb expression on his face. With eyes that were showing the signs of anger, Alzak was shocked into silence as Naruto walked past everyone and out of the guild hall. As much as he wanted to go after Naruto and make sure he was fine, he stayed with Biska and continued to help comfort her, taking a small solace in the fact that at least Naruto hadn't broken down on the spot like about a third of their guild. Naruto stepped out of the train. Now wearing steel-toed boots, black pants and a red long-sleeved shirt, he had his backpack hanging off one shoulder with one hand holding onto the strap as he began to walk to the exit. "Excuse me, sir. You dropped this," a feminine voice said from behind him. Turning around, the teen was met with a girl slightly younger than him who was holding his map. He gently grabbed it, seemingly not caring when she flinched at seeing his dead look. "Sir. Are you okay? Has something happened?" she asked in concern. The teen, despite his sadness, felt a small, sad smile tug at his lips. "I'm from Fairy Tail," was his only answer, the girl instantly growing quiet and somber. Right as he was about to walk away, he felt her arms wrap around him and her head press against his stomach. "I'm sorry," was all she said before letting go, sadly smiling and running back into the crowd. Naruto was left stunned for a moment, taking a moment to stare into the crowd before shaking his head and continuing to walk. "What a nice girl," he murmured to himself. The guild hall of Fairy Tail was a very depressing environment at the moment, all of the members still trying to come to grips with the news they had learned 33 hours ago. Even the slightest noise sounded like thunderclaps in the silence that they had all created. So, it was no wonder that when the doors creaked open, it caught everyone's attention. What nobody was expecting, however, was a Naruto caked into dried blood and injuries, though far less dead inside than a mere day and a half ago. Walking through the hall, he reached the bar and placed down a massive bag of jewels. "B-rank mission complete," he proudly exclaimed, catching anyone's attention who hadn't noticed him before. "And Naruto, is this where you've been for the past day?" Kinana asked while staring at the reward. "Yep. And you know what? After nearly being stabbed through 4 times and lying in a puddle of blood for 2 or so hours, I realized something." Mikao raised an eyebrow from his table. "As much as it hurts. As sad as I was? From everything I've heard, from the public and from you guys, the Tenrou team would hate for us to feel sad. So, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you guys out of this depressing little slump you've been in, Databayo," he exclaimed before immediately face-palming. "You really think you can just get rid of all our sadness?" Nab asked incredulously, sliding his hand down his face. Piercing blue eyes met with Nab's before looking around the guild hall. Jumping onto the bar, he addressed everyone. "On my name and honor, I promise all of you that I'm coming for all that sadness and anger inside you. And I'm not stopping until I take every last morsel. X787, current year. Everybody, I have an announcement," Mikao yelled while standing on the bar. Once everybody was staring at him, he coughed slightly and began to speak. "Now, I know that over the last 3 years things have been a bit more difficult than any of us are used to," he said while looking at their smaller guild hall. About a year after the deaths of the Tenrou group, the surviving members of Fairy Tail had to sell their old castle-sized guild hall and go for a slightly smaller hall. They had found a good-sized building on the outskirts of Magnolia and had moved into that instead, now able to actually have spare money after bills for the building. "No, really?" one of the members said sarcastically, getting a few chuckles out of the group. "Yes, you idiot," Mikao replied in jest before continuing, "but I have good news for everyone. Something truly worthy of celebrating," he said, getting a few raised eyebrows from some of the members. "What's the announcement? Wonder what it could be. Reckon it has anything to do with the Grand Magic Games?" one asked, getting a few grunts and shrugs. "Maybe it has something to do with Naruto," Romeo suggested, getting a few murmurs as everyone looked over at the teen. Said teen was currently eating a large bowl of ramen and turned towards Romeo at hearing his name. As he turned around, his face could be seen. The 17-year-old now had lost nearly all of his baby fat. His whiskers were slightly more pronounced, and his hair slightly longer. Overall, he made for a surprisingly attractive specimen that many a client had tried to woo, only to meet the brick wall that was Naruto, though it had never stopped any of them from trying. He was wearing burnt orange cargo pants, black combat boots and a long-sleeved burnt orange jacket with black arms and black tiger stripes, the teen having a fishnet shirt on underneath the jacket. "All right. Quiet down," Mikao continued, most of the murmurs dying down instantly now. "This announcement I have. For the first time in 3 years," he said, purposefully pausing to let their anticipation build up. "What is it?" Alzak asked as his wife of 2 years played with their nearly 2-year-old daughter. Naruto meanwhile continued to eat his ramen while looking at Mikao curiously, giving a thumbs up to Kinana as she places another bowl down, knowing that he would still be hungry after his 7th bowl. "We finally have an S-rank mage. Naruto Uzumaki," he said, a massive round of applause sounding out after the announcement. The poor teen himself, though, was currently choking, having accidentally inhaled some ramen from the surprise of the announcement. Kanana was given the unfortunate responsibility of trying her hardest to stop him from dying from his ramen. With a wheezing cough, the ramen was sent flying out of his throat and onto the floor. "I'm becoming an S-class mage?" he asked in astonishment. "Yep. With all the quests and money you've been funding into the guild. Not to mention all that secret training you've been doing, you've gotten much stronger," Mikao said with pride. "Fuck yeah!" Naruto yelled while jumping up and fist pumping. The guild members continued to cheer and applaud while surrounding the cheering team. The new S-class wizard being picked up and thrown up and down as he cheered. "I'm an S-class mage now, Databeo. This is the best day ever." He cheered while being thrown around. He was too ecstatic to even notice that his verbal tick had slipped out as he was finally let back onto the ground. Once his feet were back onto the ground, he turned to face Mikao with the largest smile any of them had ever seen on his face. The man smiling in return. "Even though we haven't had any S-class mages for 3 years now, we still have 1 or 2 S-rank missions that you can go on," he supplied helpfully while pointing to a door on the right-hand side of the building against the back wall. Around the two, the members began to murmur quietly while looking at the door. The door, and by extension the room, had been blocked off by Mikao the second they had gotten the new building. No one had even known what was in the room, not even Kanana or Wakaba. Though now they supposed they knew, that's where the S-class missions were held and stored. Naruto grinned and basically skipped into the room, careful to make sure that no one saw what was inside. Upon entering the room and turning on the light, he saw a board at the back with 2 posters on it. "So that's the mission board. But what's the rest of this stuff?" Naruto asked himself while slowly walking around. The room, while fairly large but not overly so, large shelves lining the walls. Inside the shelves were numerous books, scrolls and items, some of them looking quite new, others looking ancient, almost predating the current calendar system. Looking around at some of the items, he saw everything from a strange glowing feather to a large golden gauntlet with strange slots on the knuckles and back of the palm. "What the fuck is this thing? What's even supposed to fit into these spaces?" he asked himself while staring at the gauntlet in confusion. "It looks stupid," he finally declared to himself. Eventually growing bored of looking at and pondering the large gauntlet, he continued walking towards the mission board. Once he reached the board, he ended up looking over the 2 mission requests, and humming as he scanned over them and thought, "So, it's either a Dark Guild beat-em-up, or tracking down and apprehending Jose Porla. How did he escape?" Naruto asked himself in shock, before realizing something. Wait, so it's either track down and apprehend criminals or track down and apprehend a criminal? Such variety, he muttered to himself. Shaking his head after a few more moments of thought, he grabbed the mission to apprehend Jose. Though that choice was made almost purely through selfish reasons, the guy declared war on Fairy Tail 3 years ago. Naruto reckoned he deserved a lot more time in jail. Walking out of the secretive room, he walked over to the bar and handed the mission to Mikao, who raised an eyebrow at his decision but nodded and personally filled out the book, not fully trusting Kanana to do it by herself just yet. S-rank missions had a few extra steps in applying for them than any other rank of mission. Everyone waited with bated breath as Mikao filled out the details and stamped it before handing back the poster to Naruto, who smiled and nodded before blasting out of the guild hall at breakneck speeds and causing a large gust of wind to swirl around the guild hall before slowly settling down. What the hell was the quest that Naruto got? He bolted the second he could, Wakaba asked while sidling up to Mikao, who just grinned and turned to Wakaba. "It wasn't much. Just a mission to apprehend Jose Porla," he said idly, getting shouts of surprise and anger from the guild. "That lowlife escaped. You're letting Naruto go after him. He might attack the guild again." Mikao merely weathered the shouts with a look of annoyance which began to grow as they didn't stop. "Shut up!" he roared in anger, effectively silencing the guild. "Jose has been in a prison for 3 years, not being able to use his magic. There is no way that he's as strong as he was 3 years ago. And don't any of you trust Naruto?" he admonished in disappointment. But even Erza couldn't beat Jose. And she was stronger than Naruto is now. A member said somberly, the guild growing quiet at the reminder of the dead members from Tenrou. "Are you just going to let all of Naruto's hard work and training be discredited that easily? Do you know how hard he pushes himself?" the 4th guild master asked the members, a flicker of anger appearing in his eyes. "And no. But I mean, they were the strongest members we've ever had. And only a few of them could have stood up to Jose, even with him weakened," another member glumly replied. The 4th master looked at everyone with narrowed eyes before huffing angrily and shaking his head. "I believe in Naruto. Would you all like to know why I've wanted to promote him to S-class for over a year now?" At everyone's hesitant head shakes, he continued, "It's because unlike the rest of us, he doesn't try to stay in the past, fixate on those that are gone, and ruin his present life. He looks forward. And apparently that's something we need in large spades in this guild," he said with disappointment, almost every member looking down in shame. Jose was a simple man. He respected and loved power. He wanted nothing more to be the strongest, and anybody who came close to his strength, or was stronger than him, had to be eliminated. If not now, then eventually. He was smart enough to know that he needed to be stronger to take out the Ishgar 4, for example. Though Jose also didn't like those who wronged him. And Fairy Tail had also wronged him 3 years ago. And even with the members that led to his defeat all but eviscerated while on their sacred island, He still hungered to destroy the guild, down to every last man, woman and child. And that is how Naruto found Jose, sitting in an abandoned house while plotting against Fairy Tail, the man laughing insanely to himself as he planned out how to crush all of the members. Said teen having a photo of himself on a nearby board with knives embedded in it, photos of most of the other members connected to his by string. So, he knows I'm the strongest and believes that if I fall all hope is lost? Naruto thought to himself. Soon I'll crush all you pathetic fairies with my bare hands and never have to worry about your meddling ways ever again. Jose cackled to himself. The wizard sensed the attack far too late to stop it or avoid it, though he did manage a minimal defense, as the bludgeon hit him, sending him flying like a ragdoll out of the window and into a field outside the town he was currently hiding in, the teen following after the ex-wizard saint while changing his bludgeon for a far lighter weapon in the form of a tanto. Reaching the impact site, the teen felt a malicious magic flare up and growled in annoyance. I knew this wouldn't be easy, but the least you could have done is get knocked out from that. Naruto complained comically while resting on one foot and scratching his head. You're one of those fairy scum. Jose yelled while stepping out of the dust cloud while glaring at Naruto, his malicious magic roiling around him. Huh? Am I? I look pretty human to me. Wait. Maybe I'm a really big fairy. Let me try to fly. Naruto joked while jumping and opening his body like a starfish and belly flopping onto the ground with a thud. Not a fairy, he grumbled. You dare mock me? Die. Jose yelled while shooting a beam of magic at Naruto. The teen, from his sprawled-out position on the ground, pushed off with one hand and shot off to the left, rolling along the ground. As he rolled, he used his tanto to flick rocks and dirt into Jose's eyes. The attack hitting home and the wanted criminal crying out in slight pain while holding his eyes. Naruto used this chance to stop rolling and push himself into the air, throwing his tanto with lethal precision at the temporarily blinded mage with already equipping another weapon. Said mage sensed the attack, barely, and managed to avoid the incapacitating shot it otherwise would have been, by jumping backwards, the weapon only slicing his legs instead of piercing them like the teen had planned, though he had no intention of letting such a potentially dangerous man gain the momentum of the battle back. The weapon that Naruto chose was a plain double-ended scythe. A 6-foot plain black pole with a sharpened curved blade at either end of the pole, both blades pointing in opposite directions. Unfortunately, he had to make do with this weapon being normal, no magical enhancements. He had yet to find someone skilled enough to make a scythe with the specifications he ideally wanted, or just capable of creating a magical scythe. Regardless, this scythe was still more than enough to be made dangerous in the right hands. The weapon only used by Naruto when he planned for an all-out offensive, like he was currently doing. The ex-wizard saint finally cleared his eyes as Naruto reached him, desperately leaning back to avoid the initial strike from the scythe. He was forced to turn his backwards, leaning into a somersault as the second blade came around at his legs, capitalizing on him planting his feet while leaning back. You don't really do physical fights, do ya, pal? Naruto teased while continuing his assault. Jose growled and wanted to reply except for the fact that his entire being was going into not being hit by the spinning whirlwind of metal and flesh that Naruto had become. Stumbling into a standing position once more, he was met with a downward swing which barely missed him. Stabbing into the ground, the polearm was then used by the skilled teen to shoot himself forward like a pole vault, pulling his scythe out of the ground at the same time as he kicked Jose in the chest, sending the older man flying through a few nearby trees before hitting a particularly thick one with an audible snap. Despite being his enemy, and his anger at some of the things Jose had been planning to do to him and his guild mates, the new S-class wizard still winced slightly at the sound the older man's body made as it impacted the last tree. Before he could do anything, however, he was met with a weak but fast beam of magic heading straight towards him. Rolling to the side, he received a nasty burn on the left side of his stomach and on the inside of his left arm. Biting back a cry of pain, he glared dangerously at Jose. Jose himself was merely clutching his ribs while painfully chuckling evilly at the teen. Enjoy that, you little pest? Jose spat out angrily before groaning in pain. You may be strong, but you have no experience. No resolve. You sympathize too easily, like that fool Makarov and his precious children who all got killed. He yells at Naruto while huffing as the multiple broken ribs he now had flared up in protest at his yelling. The teen bit back another gasp of pain as the magic-induced burns flared up again in response to Jose's angered state of mind, some of the residual magic and the injuries causing the flare. His blue eyes narrowed dangerously at the ex-wizard saint, who took great delight in the pained expression, seemingly not noticing the deadly glare. Hurts, doesn't it? This is what I'll do to the rest of those pathetic fairies once I'm done with your mangled corpse. Nothing will stand in my way. Not the Rune Knights, not the Magic Council, and certainly not some pathetic Titania wannabe like you. He screamed before yelling in pain while his right leg buckled from the pain. Naruto clenched his teeth while rising up to his full height once again. The second-degree burns already beginning to create blisters and causing a large amount of pain to the teen, though nothing even remotely life-threatening. His clenched teeth and animalistic glare giving him an ominous look thanks to the wind ruffling his spiky golden locks around. Unknowingly, he began to release a weak amount of killing intent, surprising Jose and making him growl as he realized he was beginning to become scared of the upstart. You know, Talking ill of the dead isn't a very nice thing to do, Naruto spat through ground teeth, and calling me a wannabe? That isn't very nice either, he says, recalling the Tonto and sighed back to his equipped dimension. Jose grit his teeth and began to gather a dark and roiling ball of purple magic in the palm that wasn't clutching his chest, condensing more and more magic into the attack. Meanwhile, Naruto raised his right arm up, with his palm facing upwards as he glared at Jose from the shadows of his hair. Here, I'll show you something that sets me apart from Urza. And what will end this fight, Naruto grits out as his magic begins to rise around him. Jose watched in fascination and fear as more and more magic began to coalesce in the teen's palm. A bright blue ball of magic growing larger and larger with what seemed to be hundreds of thousands of tornadoes trapped inside. Eventually it reached a seemingly stable size and stopped growing. If someone were to look at the two fighters from the sidelines, they'd notice the parallels between their final attacks at that moment. They both had condensed balls of magic in their right palms and had taken injuries to the chest from the other. For a moment it seemed like they were in the same mindset, though that was a false assumption. While Naruto's attack emitted a warm blue light, Jose's emitted a sickly purple light. Not only that, but Jose's attack wasn't going to be a close-range physical attack like Naruto's. In an unspoken signal, the two fighters lurched forward, Jose's palm outstretching into a magic circle which sucked up the condensed ball of magic and turned it into a large wave of energy. Meanwhile, Naruto sprinted at top speed towards the weakened mage. Dead wave! He screams out as a massive beam of magic shoots at Naruto. Looking at the beam that was roughly the size of a single-story house, the teen glared and used magic to augment his legs, shooting to the side. Using the momentary distraction and smoke screen the dead wave threw up, the teen once again used magic to strengthen himself and shot forward like a bullet, the grinding ball floating above his palm creating a vortex of wind around him as he burst out of the smoke and attacked Jose too fast for the man to defend against. In one clean move, the teen swung his arm, reminiscent of a punch, and scored a clean hit directly in Jose's chest. He yelled in anger and pain as the ball ground into Jose's abdomen. The man screamed in pain as the attack burnt and ground into his chest, also damaging his already broken ribs. Right before it could cause too much damage though, Naruto had the amount of magic in the technique, causing the man to go flying as the technique destabilized and exploded. The teen getting a few cuts up his arm but otherwise channeling the explosive blast of wind at Jose and away from himself. The man hitting the ground limply and bouncing like a ragdoll before rolling roughly and finally sliding to a stop on the upturned dirt of the once beautiful plain. After stiffly walking over to the man and seeing that he was actually down for the count this time, Naruto finally fell to his knees and yelled in pain, a yell he had been trying his hardest to force down in the later part of their fight. Just for that he ground out, "I'm going to make sure they only feed you Brussels sprouts in prison, you evil piece of fuck," Naruto huffed, while holding his left arm to his chest. Still holding his left arm to his chest, the teen looked around the room. Jose himself was still unconscious, but in the 20 minutes since the end of their battle, the man had been bound and gagged comically by Naruto as a form of pranking revenge. Moving over to all of Jose's files and papers, he looked through them for anything that may be important, or of danger, not knowing what exactly either of those things would be, so he grabbed anything that vaguely fit those descriptions. Finally, he found a dark red folder, instantly catching his attention. Carefully he opened it and scanned through its contents. There were 5 pieces of paper inside the folder, 4 of which were photos. The 4 photos showed firelit ruins in a dark cave, some runes and carvings on the outside of the ruins, and a map with a marking for where the ruins could be found. The final piece of paper seemed to be a report of sort. The young S-class mage was quick to begin reading it. To Jose, "I'm glad to hear you finally got out of that ridiculous prison they put you in. Anyway, since you've been out and contacted me, I've looked into any ways of gaining immense power. Magical artifacts and such. Anyway, some of my boys found this beauty. It's a bunch of ruins from before the X calendar system. Possibly even 5,000 years old, some of them are guessing. Apparently there's some super mystical being inside, a demon or something, that has immeasurable power. Like from what the runes on the outside of the ruins are saying. The power this thing has makes those fairy tales about dragons sound like kittens with foam teeth and claws. Only problem though is that it has some sort of protective matrix around it. Once you get down here we can finally break this matrix and get inside. I can only wonder about the treasures inside. Though that demon thing inside has also piqued my interest. I mean, who's ever heard of a demon shaped like a fox with 9 tails? The letter had no name at the bottom, which annoyed the teen, but he still grabbed it anyway, knowing that this single file was the most damning thing he could possibly find, unless he found some sort of link between Jose and Zeref or something. After looking around for another few minutes, the teen finally called it quits and finished, grabbing Jose and the few files he thought were worthy of the council's attention, and beginning the long journey to Crocus. A 9-tailed fox demon? Why does that sound familiar? Naruto thought to himself in confusion while walking, careful not to aggravate his injuries. Deep in a massive cavern sat a mythical creature, many millennia old. Its massive form covered in algae and other plant life from its thousands of years of unmoving. Many animals lying on or walking over its form. These animals ranged from regular animals to animals far larger and more dangerous looking than they have any right to be. By the creature's head was a waterfall, the large torrent of water falling onto its head, cascading down the only clean portion of its fur, and into a lake which it rested its forearms inside. A deep, rumbling growl emanated from its mouth and reverberated through the cavern, startling some of the animals. For the first time in thousands of years it opened one of its eyes, showing a massive blood-red eye with a slit, the action slow and ominous from the intense drowsiness it felt. Once its eye fully opened it looked around the cavern, seeing how it had changed in his slumber. I am awake, it thought while looking around, so the brat is finally back, and he finally found out I exist, it thought with an internal chuckle, even though the knowledge that I exist has re-established our base connection. I still can't do anything until we meet face to face. Or he gets closer to my location. I guess I'll just nap until he gets here. I wonder if I can make him shit himself in fear when he finally finds me, the creature thought with a chuckle as its eye once again closed while it released a final large exhale, creating a gust of wind inside the cavern. Naruto stood in the center of a semicircle of people. All of them raised above him on a podium to create a faux sense of superiority in the people sitting above him. Naruto understood this. He understood why this was so. They had to make sure that people, and especially mages, know that they are the ones with power. But what ruined the intricate illusion for the team was the knowledge that he could take out practically all of them in a matter of moments. So, despite their tense gazes and disapproving scowls, he stood in the most relaxed manner possible while staring up at them. So you're the young upstart that battled and defeated Jose Parla? It seems Fairy Tail has a talent for finding powerful mages, one of the Magic Council members scoffs. Naruto just chuckled lightly while nodding, his gaze consistently coming back to the council member flicking through the dark red folder he had found in Jose's hideout. Something made him uneasy about what he had read in the folder. It wasn't necessarily a bad type of uneasiness, but that didn't excuse the fact that what he had read had refused to leave his mind for some strange reason. He felt almost drawn to the ruins the report had spoken of, regardless for your age. And this being your first S-class mission. You've done well. Pretty minimal property damage as well. At least I can respect you for that, the first council member spoke. The member currently reading through the report hummed while reading the letter. It's quite disconcerting that something like this was discovered without any of us catching wind of it. The rest of the council members murmured in agreement, and Naruto shifted his weight slightly as it appeared that they completely forgot about him. Coughing slightly to catch their attention, the teen leveled them all with an annoyed gaze. Apologies, young Naruto. We appear to have forgotten about you momentarily. If that is all that you have to report, then you may leave now, an elder member spoke kindly. Nodding in understanding, the blonde left without a further word. As he walked, he felt a flare of pain from his side and winced while lightly cradling the wound. For as weak as he supposedly got while in prison, he still managed to get such a painful attack, and Naruto thought in annoyance, not for the first time, realizing how weak he was in the grand scheme of things. You may be strong, but you have no experience. No resolve. You sympathize too easily, Naruto growled as Jose's words from their battle came to mind. As much as he disliked the man for his threats against Fairy Tail, and his attitude in general, he couldn't dispute the man's points. He had paused after hearing Jose hit the tree, the rookiest of rookie moves, and unlike the lower-level thugs and mages he had been fighting before, the enemies he would be facing as an S-rank mage would capitalize on any rookie mistakes like that. As he walked down the hallway, he felt his already rock-solid resolve grow even stronger. Making up his mind, he nodded to himself before taking off, practically a blur to the rune knights guarding the door, as he flew out of the building and began making his way back to Magnolia. Mikao stared at the 17-year-old with a confused gaze, looking between his face and the poster he was holding up multiple times before finally speaking. Naruto, you just got back from an S-class mission. You really want to take one so soon? He asked with a small amount of concern laced into his voice. Yes. I need to gain experience against higher-level enemies, Naruto said resolutely. With a deep sigh, the guild master marked down the mission for Naruto, unable to stop the smile that stretched his lips at seeing the smile on Naruto's face. Just be careful, okay? You've done a lot for this guild. And you're already injured enough from Jose, he said, not noticing how loud he had said that last sentence. Naruto's injured? Kanana asked in alarm, catching the guild's attention. Almost as if the move was practiced, everyone turned to Naruto with worried gazes. This included the 2-year-old Asuka Kano. Bibwig brothers hurt? She asked as her big purple eyes began to tear up. Naruto immediately turned away so that he wouldn't break. Despite only being 2, Asuka saw Naruto as her cool big brother and looked up to him. So, hearing that he was hurt was beginning to make her sad, which no one in the guild wanted. And no, I'm not hurt. Kanana's just teasing her big brother. Naruto lied, in hopes to make Asuka stop crying. Oh! Asuka muttered as the tears began to stop building up in her eyes. Joke? Joke. Naruto confirmed before sprinting off before Kanana, or anyone else, could stop him. It wasn't a joke, and Naruto, get back here, mister! Kanana yelled to the shrinking dust cloud, sighing as she realized that yelling now would be a futile effort. The 16-year-old girl puffed up her cheeks and stomped back over to the bar. Stupid doesn't listen, piece of my stinking, she muttered in annoyance while angrily cleaning some dishes, getting some chuckles out of the guild. You know, on second thought, fighting an entire guild of dark mages with second-degree burns covering my left side and left arm really wasn't the smartest decision, Naruto thought to himself while rolling backwards. Spinning the katana in his right hand into a reverse grip, the blade spun around to cover his back against the blade, which met it with a loud clang. Flicking his sword while spinning around, he unbalanced the mage and kicked him into one of his friends. As they both fell to the ground, he focused his attention on the incoming tidal wave of water magic heading towards him. Widening his eyes, he felt panic set in as the wave grew closer. Bolting to his left, he smashed through a window and rolled painfully across the grass as the wave broke open the front of their guild hall. With a hiss of pain, he dragged himself to his feet, his multiple injuries screaming in protest to his movements, even as he used his sword to help prop himself up. Seeing the 4 remaining members approaching him was enough to make him straighten up. Of course, even after battling their 23 other members, Naruto had managed to injure them all. I seem to remember there being 9 of you before that wave. The other 5 must have passed out from exertion, right? Naruto asked smugly, forcing down the coughing fit he could feel coming. The guild master growled in fury, shooting forward with a howl of pure anger. Naruto, using his brainless charge to his own advantage, used his sword stabbed in the ground to twirl around and strike the mage clean in the face with the heel of his foot. With a grunt of pain, the guild master was sent flying back faster than any of the members could react and impacted one head-on. The impact knocked both out, though the increased force used on the guild master made Naruto grit his teeth and force down a scream as many of his injuries flared in pain. The last 2 members seemed to notice this and rush forward, though not fast enough. Fighting through the pain, the new S-class mage reacted as quickly as he could. Leaning forward, he flicked his katana out of the ground, blinding one of them with dirt and rocks. Using the hesitation in his teammate, the blonde mage rushed forward and punched the non-blinded dark mage in the stomach with his right hand, the man passing out from the punch that was reinforced by the grip Naruto had on his katana. As the last mage began to swear and finally clear his stinging eyes, Naruto spun and impacted his temple with the hilt of his sword. As the last enemy crumpled in a lifeless heap at his feet, the teen paused and looked around, wary of any sneak attacks, which he had learned the hard way that this particular guild was very fond of doing. When he finally found the situation to be clear, he allowed his body to relax. Almost instantly the sword slipped from his grasp, his exhaustion breaking his magic and causing the sword to be returned back to his pocket dimension. With a loud exhale, his entire body slumped over, and as he leaned back while falling to his knees, the teen let out a scream of pain that he had been holding in the entire fight. Son of a fucking cunt! He internally screamed to himself as some of his blood dripped onto the torn-up dirt and grass below him. I fucking won, Databeo! He screamed out, throwing his hands in the air while leaning back. This proved to be a mistake, however, as his injuries flared again, and he quickly leaned forward and cradled his abdomen in pain. Hissing through gritted teeth, he tried to stay as still as possible. This isn't too bad, he tried to trick himself, just a few flesh wounds. Nothing overly painful, who am I kidding? This hurts so goddamn much. Being watched over by his guild members wasn't anything new to the blonde teen. Many a time, the teen had come back from missions still bleeding or sporting copious injuries. Though of course, the teen had never had a plethora of injuries as bad as his current ones. So that was how Naruto found himself practically chained to couch in the room which served as the guild library, currently being kept company by 4 guild members plus Asuka, in an attempt to make sure that he didn't try anything strenuous or try to escape when no one was around. Big brother! Asuka yelled, and she clumsily ran over to him. The teen raised an eyebrow as she ran over, holding a fairly thick and old-looking book, the pages yellowed with time. With a smile that glowed with the pride of a million small children, the girl held the book up to show a cover page with a blank humanoid figure holding a sword. You! She crowed while showing him. Thank you, Asuka, he chuckled while smiling and ruffling her hair. Gently grabbing the book from her, he leafed through a few pages to see what it was, the title having faded from the cover page. As he skimmed through the pages, his eyes grew wider and wider, getting his fellow guild members' attention. Hey Naruto! What's so special about that book? One of them asked curiously, though he was ignored by the teen. Asuka, where did you find this? Naruto asked while looking down at the still proudly smiling child. Box, she said, still very proud of herself. Looking at the other members in the library with him, he raised an eyebrow and only got shrugs in response. Hey Asuka, can you show me the box? One of them asked the girl gently. She nodded at light speed and grabbed his hand, tugging him in the direction she had run from. Meanwhile Naruto continued looking through the book with wide eyes. Finally, he was snapped out of his trance when someone clicked their fingers in front of his face. Seriously, Naruto? I once heard you complain for an hour straight about reading. Naruto huffed at that. He didn't hate reading. He just hated that particular series Kinana had been trying to make him read. Tree something, and now you're flicking through this book like it's the be-all and end-all. What even is it? Naruto carefully shut the book and looked up at his fellow guild member with eyes full of wonder and excitement. It's a book about swordsmanship, like a training manual. An honest-to-God sword style. He cheered while throwing his hands in the air. The smile on the teen's face was so large and full of joy that the fairy tale member was momentarily blinded, but also surprised. While Naruto was always smiling and cracking jokes, never had anyone in the guild seen him as happy as he currently was. Though even as happy as the man was for his fellow member, he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the book held in Naruto's hand. Urza never told us about a sword-style manual, or ever trained in one. Looking at the book more closely, he noticed just how old it looked. So where did Asuka even find it? Yeah. Go big brother. Asuka yelled in encouragement from the side of the clearing, sitting on Bisca's lap as they watched Naruto. Said teen was currently trying to attempt a combo from the training manual from heaven. The teen had been practicing his sword techniques for the past 3 and a bit weeks, and this was the first combo that he had started. Everything before this was learning how to swing a sword properly and acclimating to the change in movements. Naruto had no idea that changing the angle he held his sword by so little could completely change how it felt to swing the weapon. Though, he was especially excited now because he had passed the exercises that ingrained the muscle memory into his head. Now he could do the fun stuff. Asuka watched, transfixed on her big brother, as he attempted the combo once more, his body not used to the fluid stringing together of attacks, and causing him to trip and fumble more than once. His current attempt wasn't his best, having started to fumble on the third action. His best attempt he didn't fumble until his fifth, but that didn't matter to the small girl, who simply laughed and giggled as Naruto once again tried to smoothly transition from a downward swing to a wide, sweeping swing and once again tripped over his own foot and sent himself tumbling with a yelp. Bisca couldn't help but wince slightly as the teen hit the ground for the umpteenth time in the last 2 hours. If nothing else, she had to give Naruto credit for not giving up by this point, even if his clothes had more green and brown stains from hitting the ground than any clothing has any right to. So, Naruto, she calls out as he jumps back onto his feet with a low grumble. Come up with any new ideas about where this book came from? She asked the teen as he looked over at her. At the mention of the book he was currently learning from, he rolled his eyes and huffed while getting back into the starting stance. As I told Mikao, I have no idea who this Freeze Degaran guy is, nor why he would be so interested in me. Naruto grunts while going through the motions once again. It's FFFFFFFFFF. Naruto remembers Asuka is there, and nervously sees the dark look on Bisca's face. Freak Reiki. Yeah. He yelps as he sends himself tumbling again. Ah. Big blow fell. Asuka pouts and gets a good-natured laugh from her mother. From his position on the ground, Naruto takes a moment to laugh alongside Bisca, which quickly gets Asuka to begin laughing as well. For a few moments the clearing is filled with the sound of the three laughing before returning to the gentle sound of animals living their lives and wind rustling through the trees and grass. Just sucks. From what I could tell, that box was full as super helpful books. But the others wanted to be cautious and check them. Bah. Naruto complains while kicking his legs in the air before letting them fall back to the ground. Hey. Don't blame them. A mysterious box appears, full of seemingly old and knowledgeable books that all help you in some way. You can't possibly say that isn't suspicious. They're just making sure you don't end up as a strange toad by opening one or something. Bisca lectures the teen. Yes, mother. Naruto snarks while rolling his eyes, and Asuka giggles quietly. And hey, toads are cool, he says while raising an arm from the grass to point at her and angrily glare. Bisca sighs and face palms while shaking her head, but even as she does this, a fond smile stretches her lips. A few days later, Kinana sighs while unlocking Naruto's door with the spare key he had given her. Walking inside the surprisingly clean, but still slightly messy, house, she easily navigates the mess of furniture and the occasional piece of rubbish before hopping up the steps, 2 at a time. Once she gets to the second floor, she quickly walks over to his door and opens it. Seeing the bed empty, she looks around. After a second or two, she sees him, resting on his arms at his desk with books open and stacked up around him. Next to one of his arms is an array of runes drawn in pen, though even from the doorway she could tell that some of them were shaky at best and that the array wasn't done. She guessed that he must have gotten annoyed at his shaky hand and decided that sleep was needed instead of trying to push through the exhaustion. From experience, she also knew that this had likely happened at somewhere around 2 in the morning. Walking over, she gently shakes his shoulder while murmuring for him to wake up. When all he does is mumble in his sleep, she frowns while puffing up her cheeks and glaring at him. Drawing her leg back, she kicks the one of the legs on his chair roughly, which makes it jolt, and finally wakes up Naruto, who blinks rapidly at his sudden awakening. You did it again, she says disapprovingly while gesturing to the books and messy rune array. Taking a moment to gather his thoughts, he sheepishly scratches the back of his head while looking up at the girl that was 1 year his junior. Said girl just sighed and shook her head before lightly tugging on his arm as he stood up. Why the rush? He asked her curiously. There's someone at the guild hall looking for you, she answered simply while still trying to pull him towards the front door, the older teen moving in the direction so that she wouldn't just be uselessly pulling on his arm. Really? This early? He whines as she pulls him. It's 10 in the morning, she said dryly while dragging him out the front door. As Naruto and Kinana approached the front of the guild hall, they noticed a man wearing a fairly familiar set of robes and a squadron of rune knights with them, causing Naruto to groan loudly and catch everyone's attention. The Magic Council? I was there last week. What do you guys want now? Naruto Uzumaki. By order of the Magic Council, you must appear for a meeting at Crocus. We will escort you there immediately, the man said, ignoring Naruto's whining. Ugh, hey. Fine. Naruto exclaims while stomping over, knowing from experience that the people they sent for him are often relentless and simply don't care about whatever else he may have going on. Doesn't mean that he isn't going to give the council hell for this though. They should know better by now, honestly. Better keep up though, and with that, Naruto took off at high speeds towards Crocus, laughing at the man and the soldiers yelling, "Nab! Are you seriously telling me that you found nothing on this Freeze Digaran?" Macau asked while looking between his friend and the box filled with old and mysterious books. "No. Nothing. But I'm telling you, Freeze Digaran is obviously a fake name," Nab says while moving his hands around wildly. This is most likely the first time they've ever used that name as well. Macau grunts and twists his lips downwards into a scowl. A small purple flame flickers around his left knuckle. "It just doesn't make sense. We've checked the books and there's no traps, and all of the information is correct and actually useful as far as we've been able to find. So why the secrecy and the fake name?" Nab wonders aloud while grabbing a random book and flipping it open to look at a page. "They want something with Naruto," Macau says resolutely while crossing his arms and humming in thought. "They want him stronger for something. The annoying thing is that we don't know their motives. They could be an enemy looking to benefit off his power somehow, or an ally looking to help him that can't show themselves for whatever reasons." Nab nods slowly as he processes the information, but neither option is particularly good. They both hold the connotation of some form of stronger enemy hiding in the shadows, and considering this is the first time we've caught onto something, those enemies are good at keeping themselves hidden. Nab slowly put the book back down and hardens his gaze while staring at Macau. "We'll get through this, just like Fairy Tail always has. And if anyone tries to hurt Naruto, a member of our family, we'll protect him, just like Fairy Tail always has," Nab says passionately, getting a devilish grin from Macau. "Of course. You really think that any of us would just let Naruto get hurt?" he asks, getting a chuckle out of both of them. "Naruto Uzumaki." "Yo!" Naruto says lackadaisically while slouching. "You have been called here today because of an urgent mission." The council member finishes with a hard glare at the board mage. "What's it this time?" he asks while pretending to yawn. "Do you remember those documents you brought back after apprehending Jose? The ones about the supposed demon trapped underground?" Naruto questions with a raised eyebrow as his posture straightens slightly. "Correct. We've managed to locate the dig site. Now normally, we would handle something like this ourselves. However, it seems word has gotten out and dark guilds from all over Fiori are heading there to try and claim this demon's powers for themselves," another member says with a dark frown. "How many dark guilds are we talking about?" Naruto asks cautiously. "From what we've been able to gather, roughly 46 dark guilds." Naruto's eyes widen and his jaw drops. 46 dark guilds? That's anywhere from 230 mages to 4,600. Naruto thought in shock, his mind momentarily shutting down. "I'm making guilds have a limit between 5 at a minimum and 100 at a maximum. That's practically an army," Naruto says in astonishment. "Precisely. All of the council members have grim looks on their faces. "That is why you will not be the only one going. There will be a task force of mages from the best guilds, and you." "A task force? How large are you planning on making it?" Naruto asked slowly, still trying to digest the number of dark mages converging on 1 point. 30 to 40 mages. "But the best ones that we can get. The wizard saints will be joining as well. Those of them we can get anyway." Naruto nods slowly, before blinking as a random guard takes a folder from one of the council members and hands it to him. "In that folder will be everyone you're working with, and our suggested team compositions and plans. All of you will meet up 2 days from now at the location in the folder. This is an SS-class mission, Uzumaki. I hope you realize what that means." Naruto nodded. SS-class missions were the rarest and most dangerous missions the continent of Ishgar had. This was the level of the 10-year and 100-year missions, and completing one basically marked a mage down for a lifetime of fame of some sort. Though, they were also the only mission where a failure was not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. Especially a mission such as this one. Naruto hardened his gaze and without another word, walked out of the council chambers while starting to open and look through the folder. As he looked through the files, Naruto felt his magic spike and his resolve harden. He would stop this threat, he would keep his family safe, he would help keep this demon and its powers out of their hands, no matter what it took. "Naruto, today's the day. Isn't it?" Macau said somberly, standing outside the guild hall with Fairy Tail's strongest member. "Yep, picked up all my weapons and prepared all the items I'll need." "Oh. Reckon I should bring some ramen?" Naruto asked with a grin. "Don't joke around about this, Naruto. You're going to war." "It's not a. It is a war," Macau hissed while stomping forward. "It's you and another 30 or so wizards against possibly thousands. That is a war." Cerulean blue eyes seemed to dim for a moment, and with the loss of brightness in his expression and body language, Macau could finally see how fake and forced his smile really was. "What do you expect me to say, Macau? I'm doing everything I can to try and stay calm. I can't go into something like this with anything less." Macau was stunned into silence, his mind furiously working on a reply. His expression softened and his lips twitched upwards. "Sadly, look at our resident knucklehead actually using his brain for once. Did it hurt?" He weakly jokes and is lucky when Naruto decides to play along. "Hey! Screw you, old man," Naruto says while pushing Macau. "Hey! I'm not that old, you brat. Could have fooled me." They are both silent for a few moments, the joking aura around them dissipating in the early morning breeze. "Be careful, kid. Seriously, I don't think the guild could survive without you." His hand landed on the teen's shoulder. "Sure you could. You guys are strong. You could make it through anything." Macau's hand tightened, cutting off his dismissal. "No. Naruto, I need you to listen, he inhaled before continuing after the Tenrou incident. No one had any will to continue. You are what allowed them, us, to continue on. You are the one that reignited our passions. We have all put our everything on you, so repeat after me. I will come back from this mission. I need to hear you say those words and mean it. The teen felt his tongue go lax in his mouth as the full meaning of those words washed over him, staring into Mikau's hardened black eyes. I will come back from this mission, he says resolutely. Good, he says with a determined nod. Make sure the rest don't find out. Okay? I just want them to think I'm doing a regular S-rank mission. Not this. Hey. Lighten up. I won't tell them, Mikau promised him, leaving out the part where he planned to tell everyone the truth after the mission was finished. Okay. I'm off. Date. He cut himself off quickly, though sadly, Mikau caught what he was about to say. And so, that was how Naruto left, dramatically stomping away as Mikau laughed at his verbal tick once more. Naruto consulted the map once more as he traveled through the treetops, finding the method much more enjoyable than sitting in a stuffy vehicle for hours. As he jumped from tree to tree and read the map, his eyes widened at a town on the way to his destination, and his next leap sends him speeding ahead at over twice his previous speed, the branch snapping at the point of impact and falling to the ground with a loud crash. It only took another 15 or so minutes to reach his destination, a small town by a large river. He smiled softly at the ambient fog wafting through the air and began walking to where he knew what he was searching for lay. As he walked, he allowed his mind to wander, and the memories to surface. I believe true strength comes from protecting something precious to you. He looked down at his palm, seeing the small scars and calluses that covered the tan skin. Images of all his guildmates appeared in his head. Whoa! Ice magic? You can do all sort of neat tricks. Hey! Can you make a snow globe, Databeo? Of course I can, but magic isn't just meant for tricks, Naruto. I know that. That's why I'm going to Fairy Tail. I'm gonna get Urza to teach me everything she knows about our magic. His bold declaration was made with a blinding grin. He walked past the last of the houses, entering the woods surrounding the village. That's right. Your magic uses weapons, doesn't it? His chubby head bobbed up and down quickly. Yep. All sorts of super strong weapons as well. Urza can do armor as well, but that's only cause she's not as cool as me. Of course not, he chuckled, but you know, when your work here is done you can take my weapon with you. Whoa. Really? You're letting me have a super cool weapon like that? The younger Naruto pointed at the Zanbatsu relaxing against the tree behind the two. Of course. It's been a family heirloom for countless generations, but I can tell it longs for battle. And I just feel bad that I'll never be able to give it what it calls for. But I think that you'll be able to. Of course. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. You'll be beating down dark mages left and right. Having a sword like that'll make me super strong, Databeo. He snapped out of his thoughts as he reached his destination, the trees clearing out for a couple of meters around the small cliff face overlooking the river. His smile quickly turned melancholy as he walked up to his destination. As he looked at the grave, and then to the custom gravestone, he knelt down and bowed his head before looking up. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Tears fell from his cheeks like waterfalls into the snow below. I should have been able to stop it. Or block it. Or dodge it. Or anything. I'm so sorry. I just wish my magic was better. That I could use armor, or something. Like Urza. He looked at the gravestone. He knelt before. I can't take your sword. I'm so sorry. I don't deserve it. My magic is too weak. I'm too weak. Sorry to Bayo. He stood up and marched away from the grave. Hey Kubikuribocho, it's me. I think I'm finally strong enough to wield you. He pulled the massive sword from out of the ground, the metal still seemingly brand new, wouldn't you think? And despite it just being a sword, he couldn't help but feel like it thrummed in his grip. Naruto walked into the building that they were using as their planning hub and rendezvous. He noticed that he was one of the last ones to arrive and that, additionally, he only recognized two people in the hall, Juranikis and Warad Sequin. Though that wasn't a surprise, with them being the number 5 and 4 spots of the Wizard Saints, respectively. Walking inside, he couldn't help but feel a bit nervous surrounded by all these powerful mages, and so just hung out around the back of the building. As he sat down, he saw a shadow cover him, so he looked up and saw a large and very buff man with green hair and tattoos over his arms and nose. The large man was sneering down at him for seemingly no reason. Hey newbie. Guild and magic? He ordered abruptly, getting Naruto to grit his teeth in annoyance. My name is Naruto. I'm from Fairy Tail and use Requip. He started angrily and ended cheerily, at least trying to make friends with the giant man. Fairy Tail? Requip magic? He asked before doubling over laughing, catching almost everyone else's attention. Hey. What's wrong with that? You're from that weakling's guild, and you use Requip. You're just a Titania copy, aren't ya? He cockily stated. The 17-year-old could feel his nails digging into his palms and his eyes darkening in anger. Making fun of his guild was enough to get someone on his shit list. But calling him a Titania copy? After all the work he had done into trying to prove that he wasn't Urza? That was easily enough to get someone on his enemies list. Both of those together? It also didn't help that a couple of other mages began to join in with the jeering and teasing. It was driving him up the wall, so many accusations that he was merely trying to copy Titania. Luckily for him, a distraction arrived. All right. I believe that everyone is here now. The representative from the Magic Council spoke up, gathering their attention now. I will be placing everyone on the same teams inside the same magic vehicles, so listen. And that was how Naruto found himself inside the carriage of a magic vehicle with only one other person. The lady sitting across from him was nothing less than stunning. Black hair cascading down to the small of her back, 2 buns on the top of her head, and 2 braids tumbling in front of her shoulders and over her large breasts. Once his eyes drifted there, he was quick to move them away while blushing. Good choice, she coldly says while glaring him down. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. He quickly clamped his mouth shut before anything else could get out. She raised an unimpressed eyebrow and scoffed. I can't believe they allowed a weakling like you in here. Especially with the Queen of Sabertooth. Like me, she scoffed while looking out the window. Naruto smiles nervously before speaking up. We're both on the same team. And we're the first that's fighting. Shouldn't we come up with, I dunno, a plan? He asks his soul teammate. The plan is that you rush in, and as they mutilate your corpse, I'll take them out. Naruto glared at the girl for her dismissive and cold attitude, her whole personality just rubbing him the wrong way. That's not a nice way to talk to your teammate. I don't have teammates. They would just slow me down. Slow you down? I want you to see something I just finished, he said, suddenly much more serious than before. I don't care for whatever toy or a 3-pronged kunai hung in front of her face as she turned her eyes to look at him. Crossing her eyes, she could see that strange symbols were written up the handle. What? This is my secret weapon. You say that having teammates slows you down? He teleports the kunai back into his pocket dimension. Trust me, lady, I'm the last teammate you have to worry about leaving behind. She stayed silent, leveling him with a disbelieving gaze before scoffing and looking back out the window, making him fume about ruining all the work he had put into making that seem cool and serious. Nothing can keep up with me, especially a no-name fairy like you, she spits acidly. Then at least let me know your name, goddammit. Minerva, she hisses in annoyance. Naruto and Minerva sat behind a bush, looking at the hundreds/thousands of mages that awaited them. The position of the demon's ruins easy to spot from their position. Grabbing his own binoculars, Naruto jumped into the tree above them and easily balanced on a branch while staring through the binoculars. You go in first, Minerva suddenly spoke up, and Naruto suddenly realized that the tree gave him more than one good look at her figure. If they're busy attacking you, it'll make my job easier. The teen deadpanned at the slightly older girl's words before sighing and grabbing one 3-pronged kunai out of his pocket dimension. Taking a moment to aim, he cocked his arm back and threw it out of the treetop and overhead of the army. Don't take your eyes off the kunai, he orders before simply disappearing into thin air. Minerva's eyes widened in shock and she quickly snapped her attention to where the kunai had been thrown, her arms going slack as she sees him in midair. He is also a teleporter? She thought to herself in shock, having thought she was the only one with any sort of ability like that. Watching her partner as his upwards momentum began to stall, she saw him grab 5 other kunai, allowing his first one to continue its original flight path. With a flick of both of his arms, the 5 kunai flew down at the army in a very spread-apart pattern. She watched as the kunai landed, near silent in their delivery, hitting 5 mages and catching everyone's attention. To Minerva, it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. A beautiful, deadly train wreck heading straight towards their enemies. She watched the teen appear from out of midair over the closest of the kunai with a massive zanbatsu. Minerva actually had the urge to blink in surprise, but she fought the action to watch what happened. And what she saw was carnage. The teen hefted the sword that looked like a massive butcher's knife and spun in a circle, taking out a good 13 or so mages before letting go of the sword. After that, Minerva lost track of the teen as he disappeared again. Instead, she watched the carnage as he teleported around the battlefield from kunai to kunai, sending each one back to whatever pocket dimension he grabbed them out of and grabbing the zanbatsu whenever it neared him and sending it careening to the next marker. She couldn't help the smirk that lit up her face at the display of violence the teen showed her. Maybe he isn't useless after all, she thought while keeping her predatory gaze on the battlefield. The final kunai must have hit the ground because all of a sudden there was a large cry that signified a substantial injury from the middle of the group. Minerva took that as her time to shine and stood up, clicking her tongue in annoyance as she noticed that they were out of range. With a simple click of her fingers she flickered across the field a few times and appeared right behind a large bulk of dark mages. Territory, she muttered with a smirk. That was the last thing the dark mages heard as they were sent flying and incredibly injured from her many explosions. The sight that met the rest of the assault teams upon their arrival was utter carnage. Spells and people going flying every few seconds. What on earth, Jura muttered to himself before snapping out of it and leading his team into the battlefield. It wasn't soon after that both sides engaged in open conflict. The results could be seen and felt for miles around. Though even with the strength of the attacking mages, the dark mages were still defending a fixed position, so they had to carve through the massive numbers to even reach their goal. Naruto felt sweat drip down his face while fending off 3 enemies at once with a katana. So I've used the Horatian 19 times. I started gaining minor injuries 3 jumps ago. I can't afford to use it willy-nilly anymore, he thought to himself while dispatching 2 of his opponents. Cerulean blue eyes narrowed in anger as the sight of more enemies rushing him filled his vision. He had been fighting for the past 20 to 25 minutes, and this had been the same repetitive pattern. Cut down a few, and another 3 appear. It was maddening. In anger, he lashed out with his sword, forgetting his recent training in favor of pure power. With a sickening squelch, his katana sliced clean through 2 necks and got lodged halfway through the 3rd. His anger slipped away faster than water through a colander as horror replaced it. He stumbled back and tripped over his own feet, falling onto his ass and staring at the 3 bodies, and the blood they were spilling, in horror. He didn't even register the man smiling evilly and charging up an attack in his direction. What he did register, though, was the hand that suddenly grabbed his collar and pulled him back. His vision swam in a myriad of colors for a moment before he found himself on the ground next to Minerva's feet, her hand letting go of his collar. He coughed and grunted in pain as she suddenly stomped lightly on his stomach, and when his eyes locked onto her, she spoke. After that showing at the beginning. Are you really going to allow yourself to be killed? She scoffed and fired a ball of magic at another group of enemies, and here I was, thinking that you could actually back up your talk for a moment. Want to feel sorry about those weaklings' deaths? Fine. Do so, it'd make you right at home with that weakling guild. But would you rather get yourself killed? She asked him angrily, and at that moment, Naruto wasn't sure what it was, but something in what she had said had snapped him out of his horror, the light returning to his eyes as his mind rushed to go back into battle mode. That's right, I can't die, can I? Not when I have so many people depending on me. His eyes snapped to his right as they caught something, and even if he refused to admit it, you're depending on me as well, aren't you? He thought while looking at Minerva, who hadn't seemed to have noticed what he had with all these people depending on me. With all their wishes on my shoulders, Minerva felt an impact extremely close to her, and widened her eyes. Spinning on the ball of her foot to look at the impact site, and feeling shock flood her system. In front of her was Naruto, currently in a barehanded power struggle with a man nearly twice his height, and seemingly made out of pure muscle. How could I ever think about letting them down? He roared inside his head while headbutting the man, and sending him flying back with a small shockwave. Jiraiya grunted while clapping his hands together once again, a veritable tidal wave of earth rising and swallowing over 100 mages. Nikis! A nearby mage called out, catching his attention. Yes? He asked while creating a defensive earth wall, from what our sensor said. We've taken out about 1,100 of roughly 3,300, the other mage begrudgingly reported. 1,100 already? I know we've taken out a bit. But not that many, he mumbled to himself. Apparently we've only taken out 700 to 800 so far. The mage scowled. Those 2 out front have been taking out the rest. At that moment Jiraiya felt a large build-up of magic and stomped forward while palms striking the air, sending the defensive barrier flying forward where it met the spell and broke down into boulders and small rocks. When the dust cleared, he saw the myriad of spells and colors flying back and forth, and the explosions and dark mages going flying far ahead of them. Ignore those mages. Focus on the girl and the requipper. The dark mages call out to each other. Jiraiya grimaced and charged his magic up, startling all the nearby mages. In the few seconds it took him to charge his magic, stones and larger rocks began to float off the air and float around him. You'll have to get past me first, he intoned before slamming both palms on the ground chasm, and like the name implied, the ground rumbled and shook. Like the wrath of the earth god given physical form, the very ground split in 2, a massive chasm opening up and swallowing close to 300 dark mages in an instant. Such a powerful ability wasn't without consequences, however, and Jiraiya fell to a knee while panting. Even while panting, he couldn't help the victorious smirk that stretched his lips. The reason for the smile? Between his squad and the advanced squad now sat a 1 kilometer long and 400 m wide chasm that was deep enough for the bottom to not be seen when standing at the top. That took 65% of my magic stores, but now Orland and Uzumaki's opponents won't get any reinforcements from our side, he thought while trying to quickly recover. Now we deal with these enemies, then go and reinforce the advanced squad, he ordered while slowly standing to his full height. Naruto growled while running. Him and Minerva having carved through the group numbering in the low hundreds that they had been fighting for the past half an hour, give or take 10 minutes. The reason he was growling was the group of roughly 50 dark mages which had taken over a nearby town. The town was small, but no innocents deserved to be caught in the crossfire of this battle. For any reason, it was that reasoning that had him moving slightly away from their destination to save and help as many villagers as possible. And for some reason that he couldn't quite determine, Minerva followed after him. She didn't say a word, she just followed with that resting bitch face that she called a neutral look. Once they reached the town, Naruto wasted no time. Despite Minerva going to hold his shoulder to keep him still and opening her mouth to speak, he still shot ahead at full speed. Jumping in the air, and equipping a dark red glaive into existence. Flipping and spinning the glaive a few times, dark red flames began to spew out of the glaive, catching the dark mage's attention and putting them on alert. After that, Naruto recklessly used his magic to increase his speed and blasted through the town. He parkoured up a wall and placed a hand on the top, pulling himself up and flinging himself forward into a flip while swinging his glaive. 2 crescents of fire leaving the blade of the weapon and impacting 2 dark mages, knocking them away from some children. Thank you, mister, one said happily. No problem, kid. Stay safe now, Naruto said with a bright smile, which upon turning away from the kids melted away. He took off at full speed, throwing his glaive into the ground and swinging around it to get around corners, or just parkouring/wall running. It only took another 5 dark mages to be taken out before the scouts and others began to yell about a light mage and to take out the villagers. That only increased Naruto's anger more, and he pumped more magic into his body and the weapon. He jumped from house to house and alley to alley, his anger clouding his judgment and causing him to merely save the village people before taking off again, barely staying still long enough to reassure them. It only took 15 minutes in total to take them out. When he finally walked out of the village, he saw Minerva standing by what appeared to be the whole village. As Naruto slowly looked between the villagers and Minerva, he saw her annoyed expression. Way to go, dumbass. You went in there to save the villagers and completely forgot about them in your hunt, she snapped, making him flinch and smile nervously. Thank you again for helping us, mister, one of the kids said from the group after running over. No problem, he ruffled the kid's hair. It's what mages are supposed to do after all. If you're done. We need to actually head towards our Miss Minerva was cut off by a wave of malevolent energy exploding out of a central point. No, Naruto muttered in fear as the presence of the energy got stronger and stronger. Move. Now! He shouted as he and Minerva took off towards the ruins. As they ran, Naruto and Minerva used every trick they had to both conserve magic and move as fast as possible. It was with this reasoning that they reached their destination in record time. The only problem was the guards around the ruins who spotted them immediately. Fuck. He swore under his breath. We don't have time to mess around, Minerva reminded him. Don't need to tell me twice, he chirped before blasting forward. The first opposition he faced was a single enemy who he used as a springboard to launch himself upwards and forwards. While in midair, he requipped his fire glaive from before and threw it like a spear straight at the ground, a shockwave of fire emanating from the point of impact and frying a few people. Shifting his body and weight on his fall, he rolled and grabbed his glaive before carving his way forward, explosions and fire surrounding him. When he felt his magic running out, he grabbed his trusty scythe out and grinned cockily at the dark mages. Running forward, he saw a row of earth spikes raising up from the ground towards him. Launching himself forward and to the side, he hooked himself on one of the spikes and spun around it, flinging himself forward and into a small group of enemies. Impacting one in the chest with both feet, he leant forward and rolled with his momentum and weight. Jumping to his feet, he quickly spun his scythe and blocked 4 bullets before throwing it forward. The scythe hit a man in the forehead with its handle, making him groan in pain as the scythe fell down. Naruto's eyes widened as the dark mages were quick to punish him for his use of such an obviously unpracticed move by breaking his scythe. Uzumaki! Door! Minerva's voice was suddenly heard, drawing his attention to the open ruins. What met his gaze was 2 extremely thick and heavy doors of stone sliding shut of seemingly their own volition. Dark mages trying and failing to stop or slow down their progress. Minerva! Get inside! He ordered, knowing that at least one of them had to get inside at all costs. Sprinting forward to gain momentum, he jumped off an enemy's chest and wounded back an arm. Inside his hand appeared a 3-pronged kunai which he threw with all his might. Stop him! Spears and other weapons were thrown at him to try their best to injure him. Minerva heard her partner's cried order and steeled herself. Looking towards the door, she saw it rapidly closing. Before she could activate her magic though, a dark mage blocked off her line of sight, making her growl with anger and punch him with a territory-infused punch, clearing a line of sight for her. 50 centimeters. She growled and dragged up the magic needed to teleport as fast as possible. 30 centimeters. Another blockage to her line of sight, extra magic was dragged out to clear it again. Naruto appeared in the air in the peripheral of her vision. 5 centimeters. No! Uzumaki won't make it in time. She cried inside her mind, her world spinning and blurring in a kaleidoscope of colors. Whip! Slam! She whirled around and found herself on the other side of the doors. Now inside the firelit hallways of the demon's ruins. Hearing a displacement of air behind her, she spun on the heel of her foot, her magic springing up, only to widen in shock at the impossible sight of Naruto kneeling in front of her, covering his mouth as a very wet cough racked his body. Uzumaki, how? She asked in surprise. Her jaw hung open as he tilted his head up and held one of his special throwing knives up with one finger through the loop on the end. Impossible! This knockoff of Titania had certainly proved to be stronger than she had expected, but he shouldn't have made it and should be too damaged by his own teleportation. But that was when she realized something. Titania was praised for her strength, but she could be so much stronger. She relied on her magic armors and weapons. She learned nothing. She simply acquired new armors, but otherwise never grew stronger. This made her complacent, made her weak in a world where a queen like herself should be strong. This boy in front of her, with a thin trail of blood dribbling down his chin, a smirk that was feral enough to beat a wolf's, and a fire in his blue eyes that could melt a mythical dragon. This boy was far from weak. He had proven himself to be a king, and as the hallway shook and slightly crumbled, their eyes turning to deeper inside the ruins, Minerva had the overwhelming feeling that he wouldn't stop at just being a king. He would be a god. A single blood-red eye opened underneath the waterfall for the second time in millennia. A small breath from his maw creating mild waves and startling animals around him. He rolled his eye around and blinked slowly a few times, once again having to get used to it being open. Humans are in my ruins, one is Naruto. But there are others? They hold evil intent. Criminals and whatever substitutes for a nuke need nowadays? Kurama rolled his eye pathetic. They think I'll aid them? Humanity seemingly hasn't grown smarter. It seems he closed his eye and continued to lay still, feeling the algae on his body and the plants growing off him. With him having fallen back into his semi-meditative state, the cavern fell back into tranquility. But Kurama knew that would only last for a few more minutes. He could feel the negativity approaching him, could feel how vile the humans approaching him were. But he couldn't stop the grin that stretched his lips at feeling Naruto, and whoever his strangely vile teammate was beginning to rush down the cavern and towards him. And if this Naruto was anything like his Naruto he would be, despite his Naruto having fought tooth and nail to try and make sure his reincarnate didn't turn out to be a carbon copy of him, then he wouldn't stand for someone with bad intentions walking around free. Especially not if they were seeking for a well of power as massive as himself. So he laid there, his smirk slowly smoothing out along with his breathing. He would enjoy the last few moments of tranquility before it was ruined. Naruto curses fierce enough to make Minerva blink at him in shock as once again the cavern seemed to come alive and melt into a wall in front of them. She once again moves forward and places her hand on the wall, her territory changing the space of the cavern wall into air. Once again allowing them to move forward, in a cycle that was quickly beginning to grate on both S-rank mages' nerves. They would chase the dark mages, and whenever they got too close, one would activate his magic and cause the cavern to block them off. It was getting to the point that even while coughing blood, Naruto was pushing himself to run faster and faster simply out of rage alone. Once again, they quickly caught up to the dark mages. Minerva wasted no time in powering up her magic. Her eyes narrowing and her beautiful features twisting in fury. At the last second the cave melted down in front of them, and took her attack as it blocked off her line of sight. Now it was Minerva's time to scream in fury. "Alright fuckers. Playtime's over," Naruto growled, and in a spike of magic and a flash of light, he stood with a massive fuck-off hammer. Minerva watched Naruto hop back a few places and sprint straight towards the wall. Swinging the hammer are flames spewing out the back of the god's damn thing. The answer to that question was yes. Why the flames? When the hammer was swung far faster than she thought he would be able to move it, and smashed through the wall no problem, she was pretty sure she figured out why. 1. They continued to run, Naruto keeping the hammer out, and while it slowed him down, that fact was negligible with the improved speed that they broke through the walls. When Naruto looked over and noticed her look, he only grinned in a fox-like manner. "What? You thought the only weapons I had were blades and throwing knives?" Minerva didn't respond and only continued running. "There it is!" One of the dark mages crowed ahead of them, making them both widen their eyes in alarm. They pushed their bodies as hard as they could to catch up. Eventually the twisting and winding cavern they had been in opened into a gargantuan cavern. They saw the group of 10 dark mages sprinting across the cavern as fast as possible. A dark smile lit up Minerva's face, and she pointed her hand at the group. Nowhere left to run, her magic spiked and the group turned around territory. An explosion tore up the ground and scared off the nearby animals. Out of the smoke, 4 figures jumped back. Out of 10, it was fairly well done to have taken 6 out in one attack while as exhausted as Minerva was. Instead she only saw it as a failure, as a weakness. She began charging up another attack when Naruto's massive hammer flew past her in a whirling maelstrom of dense metal and orange flames. The remaining 4 dark mages, who had been charging up their own retaliation, screamed in fear and flung themselves to the side as the hammer struck the ground. Like the gods had come down to smite them, the hammer hit the earth with a colossal impact and kept going, tearing up a trench of earth and tree roots. Eventually its momentum stopped, and the weapon found itself stuck inside the earth with no hope of anyone to get it out quickly. Knowing this, Naruto activated his magic to send the oversized hammer back to his dimensional pocket. He hit the ground with a roll and stumbled upon straightening up again, his exhaustion, physical, magical and mental, and injuries taking their toll. "Why the fuck won't you just die?" A dark mage yelled at the charging yellow-haired mage. Naruto's fist struck the dark mage enough to send him flying. "Because I refuse to let asshats like you hurt any more people," he roared while panting and staring down the now unconscious dark mage. "Uzumaki!" He spun around to Minerva, only to see her appear next to him and surround the two in a dome that shook and cracked from the 3-sided assault. Naruto growled in anger. He knew the attacks were aimed at him. He knew that he could have dodged them. Unbidden, Jose's words echoed in his mind. "You may be strong, but you have no experience. No resolve." Naruto cut his thoughts off as he ground his teeth together hard enough to create a sound audible enough for Minerva to hear. "Damn it! I let my guard down. We could have finished by now, all because I'm such a greenhorn." He ground out, "I should have known. After Jose, I should have known." He snapped his vibrant blue eyes up and ignored the splatter of red that flew out of his mouth and dribbled down his chin when he coughed. "Uzumaki." One splitting off to approach the demon. Blue eyes that almost looked vibrant enough to begin crackling with electricity slowly panned the landscape and found the dark mage in question. "This will hurt. This will hurt a lot. But it's either I use the Haraishin to try and stop him, or they gain access to the demon." "Alright body, reckon you can withstand one more round?" Naruto thought to himself while using half of his remaining magic reserves to pull a single kunai out of his pocket. "Dimension, Uzumaki. Are you insane? Use that again and—" "I know!" He yelled and fought back the pain from said action, glaring into Minerva's eyes. "Drop a portion of the shield. only for a second. That's all I'll need. He wound back his arm. Minerva opened a hole in the shield and the single kunai flew out as fast and accurately as Naruto could manage in his current state. He tracked its motion, his eyes flickering down to the dark mage who had stopped, and raised his arms in what the blonde could only guess was a praying motion. Closer and closer the kunai fell, the small blade whistling through the air. It would fly over the dark mage, not enough that it was nowhere near him, but also not close enough that the dark mage could accidentally move in front of it. And despite how nice the second option would have been, Naruto didn't need it. Because its current flight pattern was just perfect. Closer. Wait until it's directly above his shoulder. Rise, O great demon! Rise and follow our Kame-CK. Naruto appeared in the middle of his chant, and nailed him in the head with every ounce of strength he could muster into a single punch. The dark mage passed out instantly, his body crumpling down into the ground as it cratered around his body. Spiderweb cracks appeared in the ground through and around the crater. Naruto hit the ground with a painful-sounding thud, and he curled into himself as pain and convulsions racked his body, coughing harshly and spilling more and more life fluid with every cough. It started to die out, right as the cavern began to shake. He looked up through tear-soaked eyes and saw boulders, trees and copious amounts of algae and moss falling from the walls and ceiling of the cavern, though it soon became apparent why when a massive chunk hit the ground with a thunderous boom and sent birds and other animals. There are animals down here? The fuck, running away, and also freeing a massive tail from where it had been buried against the wall. His eyes widened in fear, but that was blocked off by a bloody cough again. More and more colossal booms were heard, the ground rumbling, water splashing and sloshing in massive waves, and a massive cloud of dust covered the entire cavern. That was before, however, Naruto felt a gust of wind was past and around his body in between a particularly violent set of coughs. Uzumaki. Panic. If Naruto had to describe Minerva's tone in one word, that would be it, and that sent alarms blaring in his head. Ignoring the burning in his chest, he looked up and froze. There, not even a few meters from him, was the massive head of the demon. He could see that it was a fox demon from this close up. That knowledge did little to help him, especially when the shadows of its 9 massive, swaying tails fell on and off him. He felt his blood freeze as its massive, blood-red slitted eyes locked onto his figure. Suddenly he was no longer covered in blood and injuries. He hadn't just fought in a small-scale war. He hadn't overused the Hiraishin. His body wasn't racked by coughs, pain and internal injuries. No, suddenly none of those things registered in his mind, because as he stared up at the demon who had Minerva Orland frozen in complete and utter fear, it wasn't hatred that was directed at him. It wasn't the bloodlust he had been inspecting. But what was directed at him? A challenge. And even if it killed him, even if he no longer had the energy to even attempt to use a spell, Naruto Uzumaki would never buckle to a challenge given to him by a demon. He coughed blood again while staring up at the demon. A menacing and blood-covered grin accompanied by cerulean blue eyes bright enough to almost glow in the dusty cavern. Try and touch my precious people, fox. I dare you. He heard a sharp intake of breath from Minerva. Said woman looked at Naruto in both awe, and like he had gone insane. Where had this teen been hiding before this mission? Before it had started, she had never even heard of him. Now she watched as he stared down a mountain-sized demon, and that was an understatement, with all the confidence of a man who knew he could win. That knew he could escape this situation at any time. And for the life of her, she couldn't figure out how. There was no way that he had just popped up out of nowhere. And then Minerva watched as the tense silence was broken by the demon's lips twitching upwards into a grin. Hey, you're definitely that idiot's reincarnation, all right. Reincarnation? What? Only you could ever stare me down with that much conviction in your eyes. Though I also see your penchant for self-destruction is as strong as ever. And here I was hoping that would be one of the things left behind, too. Both teens looked at the demon with confusion. Reincarnation? Left behind? What the hell? Naruto began, only to get cut off by the fox. I'll explain later. I need you to sit still to heal you. Warning, this will be painful. The territory mage only had enough time to hiss before the fox breathed a thick cloud of red energy onto Naruto. Naruto screamed bloody murder. He choked and screamed and coughed and cried in pain. Minerva tried to approach his writhing figure, but the growing shadow in front of her caused her slow and somewhat stumbled sprint to be turned into a backpedal as one of his giant tails slammed into the ground. She crossed her arms in front of her face and squinted her eyes as the ground splintered upwards around the tail and dust shot out of the impact line. The tail slowly rose back into the air as Naruto's screams died down, rocks and dust falling and drifting off the red fur as it rose. She ran over, inexplicably filled with a torrent of emotions as she approached Naruto in the rapidly diminishing cloud. She finally reached him, and saw the state he was in. His clothes were still as ruined as before. He still had as much blood covering him as before. He even still had quite a lot of bruises, shallow cuts and scrapes. But as he looked over his hands and arms in silent amazement, she realized something. He wasn't coughing. He didn't even seem to be in any large amount of pain. She looked up at the giant demon with suspicion and awe. It actually healed him. Pretty neat, huh? It's actually pretty simple. See, what I did was, you healed me? The fox huffed, and rolled his eyes as his bragging was cut off. though he wasn't overly surprised by any stretch. Of course, idiot. We're partners after all. Partners! Minerva exclaimed with a scowl, unable to help herself. A lone eye rolled to stare her down, and she suddenly felt her anger leave her. She took a shaky step back from Naruto. She felt judged, and judging from the half-lidded expression he found her lacking. So you're one of those regardless? Yes. We are partners. You could say we're, but not even death and reincarnation could break us apart. He suddenly raised one of his humanoid hands and formed a fist, slowly extending it until it was within an arm's reach of Naruto. What say you, partner? Ready to remind the world of our awesomeness? Naruto wasn't sure what exactly it was, but he felt every nerve inside his body tingle with excitement. He raised his arm without thinking, forming a fist in his right hand as he raised it to the demons. And despite Minerva saying it was a trap, despite his own mind saying the same thing, as his fist bumped against the demons, he felt as if a piece of his soul suddenly clicked into place. A single word was screamed from the depths of his soul. A single word, yet one that seemed to hold the weight of the world. Yakurama! And he lost himself in the euphoria that enveloped his very being. Minerva meanwhile was witness to what was without a doubt one of the most beautiful things she had ever seen. Emanating from the demon and human was an orange-yellow energy that felt like ether nano. Only regular ether nano could never come close to holding as much life in it as this energy seemingly had in spades. Eventually though it dissipated and the two ceased their fist bump. Connection fully established once again, Kurama said, sounding far too pleased for what Minerva guessed a giant fox demon should sound now. I believe the both of you have a pest problem above ground. Both of them shouted in surprise when he suddenly grabbed them and placed them on his head. Allow me to help with that, hold on tight by the way. Jura panted in exhaustion as he leant against the back of one of his thicker earth walls. He could only hope that Naruto and Minerva had been able to stop any of the dark mages from reaching the demon. He told himself over and over that the earthquake and massive spike in magic was from something else, that the demon was still sealed, but deep down, he knew that it was the demon, and that he was now fighting a losing battle. His eyes flew open in alarm as the ground began to shake once again. And what made him worried was that it wasn't following the trend of every earthquake before it. No, this one was growing stronger. Suddenly, a massive explosion was heard from the chasm that he had created earlier. Leaning around his wall, he saw the entire battlefield stop and stare at the chasm, rocks flying through the air and dust filling the sky. And then the ends of 5 massive tails appeared and hooked over the edge of one side. Suddenly, and with startling clarity, everything clicked in Jura's head. Those earthquakes, it was digging itself out. In a massive displacement of air that sent a few people tumbling ass over end, the QB flung itself up and out of the chasm using its 5 tails. People only had a moment to marvel at its size before running in fear of their lives due to its size. Boom! With a titanic crash, the giant fox hit the ground. The shockwave traveled away from the epicenter at astonishing speed, the ground moving in an almost cartoonish manner, in a wave like a liquid as it followed the shockwave, right before it cracked and burst for hundreds of meters around the main crater. People screaming as they fell in the massive cracks between huge boulders and chunks of earth. Jura felt despair filling him from the ground up, his legs feeling numb and not responding even as his mind stuttered to a halt, though that was demolished in an instant by a single cry. We've won! He looked towards the head of the demon where Naruto's shout came from and could just barely make out 2 figures on its head. Don't worry everyone, we'll take it from here. Ward's eyes widened and he instinctively raised a wall of plants at the same time that it took Jura to even widen his eyes. Lowering his head, Kurama released an ear-splitting roar across the battlefield, the earth tearing up even more and nearby trees turning to splinters from the force of the roar. Go! Kurama! A tail swept across the ground and sent a veritable hail of pebbles, rocks and boulders flying at the dark mage army. A demonic growl left Kurama's throat as he continued to attack, and Jura can only wonder what happened in the demon's ruins. Naruto's home. The guild cheered at Mikao's declaration. The cheer was killed not only by the confusion of the wolf-sized fox with 2 tails, but also by the state they saw Naruto in. Naruto! Master said you were doing an ordinary S-class mission. What happened to you? Kinana yelled while storming up to him. Kurama could only snort as Naruto smiled nervously, and held his hands up in surrender and leant back as everyone in the guild began to pelt him with questions and accusations. When Kinana noticed Mikao's expression, he was brought into it as well. Seriously, Naruto? What happened? You're caked in blood. Kinana cried in worry, her eyes beginning to moisten. It was nothing you should worry about, I promise. He hastily said. The guild relaxed minutely. Kurama recognized the trust in that action, that they trusted him enough to believe that answer, if only begrudgingly. And while he was beyond happy that his partner could once again make friends like this, he had millennia of pranks, something the original Naruto had infected him with, to catch up on. So with a grin, he snorted to catch everyone's attention. So you call a small-scale war against 2,000 dark mages not much? He watched the shocked look in Naruto's eyes turn to betrayal and saw his guild gearing up for another yelling session. Beautiful. He enjoyed the next 20 minutes of the entire guild taking turns to rip into Naruto and Mikao. He also couldn't help but coo quietly as a young girl walked up and pouted at Naruto. Big bull lie, she said in an angry tone. The most amusing part about that was the fact that those 3 words seemed to hit him harder than the rest of the yelling combined. The teen crouched down and muttering in a shadowy corner. Finally, Kurama stood back up and trotted over to Naruto, grabbing his collar with a tail and beginning to drag him into S-class room. I'll be borrowing the idiot for a bit. You can have him back when I'm done, he told the guild before closing the door with his second tail. Kurama? He dropped the teen and sat across from him. I'm sure you have a lot of questions you'd like answers to? Of course. What the hell did you mean by reincarnation date fuck? Kurama couldn't help but laugh for a few moments before calming down, diving straight into the meat of the conversation, huh? Heh, what do you move? Regardless. You are the first reincarnation of my partner, Naruto Uzumaki, who was himself the 87th reincarnation of Azura Otsutsuki. Naruto gave him a dry look. Yes. It is confusing. Let me explain you judgmental shit anyway. Azura and his brother Indra were stuck in a constant cycle where their reincarnations constantly fought against each other. Their first reincarnations were weak, barely able to utilize the weakest of jutsu. Oh, right. Jutsu is the ancient version of spells. Naruto nodded to show he understood so far, but with each reincarnation, who they reincarnated into grew stronger. Sometimes Azura won that generation's battle. Sometimes Indra won. But more often than not they tied. The 86th incarnates were the ones that had finally reached the levels of the original Indra and Azura. Naruto scrunched up his face. But if the 86th reached the original's levels of power, what happened with the 87th? Well, you and Indra's reincarnate finally broke the cycle of hatred and ended the hundreds of years old feud. But by doing this, you also put the souls of Azura and Indra to rest. They moved on, making the old you and 87th Indra reincarnate the last ones ever. Naruto blinked, having never thought he would be caught up in something like this, but since you and he were strong enough to allow your souls to reincarnate, you were both given a choice. Reincarnate, or spend the rest of time in the afterlife with your families. The last Indra incarnate chose to go the afterlife, be with the family he barely got to experience. You, on the other hand, chose reincarnation. But with 3 stipulations. I put stipulations on reincarnating my soul? Naruto asked incredulously. Indeed. After having me as your partner for 86 years you began to pick up my masterful intellect, and hey. Kurama exclaimed in annoyance as Naruto bopped him on the head. No bragging. Kurama rolled his eyes before continuing. Right. Yes, you had 3 stipulations. 1. None of your memories get taken along for the ride. 2. Your chakra isn't taken along for the ride either. That's what happened to Azura and Indra. Fuck. You don't know what chakra is, do you? Blink. Crash course. It's your body's physical and mental energies synergizing to create pure life energy inside your body. Got it? Awesome. Naruto gave him a deadpan stare. And the third. You kept your looks the original. You never got to experience his parents in real life. But you're almost the perfect mixture of their looks. You wanted to make sure that, even if you never remembered it, you always had a piece of them with you. You joke that it's so they can find me up in the afterlife. Naruto blinked away tears he could feel threatening to bubble up at what Kurama told him. Yeah. Sorry. I should have known a crybaby like you would react to it like that. Fuck you, you furry shit. Naruto said while waving his fist at the fox. Heh. You did that so that, no matter what. Even if your looks were always the same. Each reincarnation could be their own person. And even though you're only the first, I can definitely appreciate your decision. Because, and without even knowing it, you've already made a massive improvement over the original. Wait, what? Really? Yup. The original always put quantity over quality into practice with your damn clones. Clones, I will cut you, brat. And don't get your hopes up, that particular technique needs chakra to use it. Anyway, the way you've already improved over him is that you put quality over quantity into practice. Naruto hummed and nodded, before pausing. Wait, how could you ever possibly know that? I used our connection to look through your memories. Anyway, what? Anyway. I approve of. That means I get to do it too. One-way brat. Motherfucker. Anyway. I definitely approve of that belief. Because your original's battle plans were to throw clones at an enemy. And if that didn't work, throw more clones at them. Naruto had nothing, he just suddenly felt like punching the original him if he ever could. He actually felt ashamed of himself just by hearing that. That face. Right there. Kurama gestured to his face. That's the proper reaction. Good job. But I decided that since you were aiming for quality, and somehow created the fucking Haration. Kurama finished with a hiss that I'm going to teach you one of the very few moves your original had that you can actually use with this power source. But I'm warning you, the Rasengan is far from easy to learn. You think that scares me? Bring it on, furball, Naruto said challengingly. Kurama chuckled and grinned. And while Naruto thought it was because of what he said, and to be fair it partly was, the main reason was due to a whispered conversation he heard from the loud ruckus of the guild hall. So you want to make Naruto guild master? Right now? He only became an S-class mage a month ago, Nab said to his friend. Of course not right now. I'll give him a bit of time to grow. Maybe another 5 to 6 months. Then I will, Mikao replied. Kurama's grin grew slightly as Naruto burst back into the guild hall full of piss and vinegar, only to yelp and jump as they all started yelling at him again. Guild master, huh? 5 to 6 months? I reckon I could whip him into shape by then. Watch out, world. Naruto Uzumaki and Kurama are back to play, he thought to himself before trotting over to Naruto and pushing him forward when he tried to back away. Kurama, you goddamn traitor! Fairy Tail! What is this horrible parfum you all exude? Ichiya yelled from aboard the Christina. Naruto sighed from on top the head of Kurama, his head tilting to the side as Ichiya's shout ruined his concentration, his body falling out of its relaxed state as he cracked open an eyelid and rolled his eye up to stare at the blue Pegasus airship slowly lowering to the ground. Kit! Is that who I wish it isn't? Kurama growled softly while resting his head on his forearms. If you mean Ichiya and his Boy Scouts, then yes. Naruto drawled while cracking his neck. Kurama groaned loudly as he heard Ichiya yell once more and sensed him jump off the Pegasus figurehead of the airship. When suddenly, he had an idea. With speed that something of his size should not have, he swung a tail through the air in a smooth arc and smacked Ichiya out of the sky like he was swatting a particularly annoying fly. Which, to be fair to Kurama, that was what he saw Ichiya as. Naruto stood up and grabbed the small amount of incense, lazily releasing a thin line of smoke into the air. You won't be forgotten, Tenrou, he mumbled so quietly only Kurama had a chance to hear what he said. Jumping off Kurama's head as he pocketed the incense, he approached the half-buried form of the eccentric midget with an almost lackadaisical air. Still alive? Kurama! Ichiya shouted while jumping back onto his feet. Your parfum is as strong as ever, and you're still alive. Kurama grumbled while shrinking down to his two-tailed form and walking over. Maestro only grows stronger from your beautiful attacks, and the Boy Scouts arrive. That almost rhymed, Kurama, Naruto joked to his partner, as the three blue Pegasus mages landed beside their posing leader. I will eat your ramen. Naruto gasped and clutched his chest while taking a step back, staring at the wolf-sized kitsune with a look full of grief at his betrayal. Melodramatic idiot, Kurama scoffed with a chuckle. Naruto! I see you are looking as dashing as ever. Your parfum is truly one to marvel at, Ichiya said while pointing two fingers at him. Yes? Listen. What are you doing here, Ichiya? You know what today is, Naruto said seriously. Indeed. I will allow Hibiki to explain. He took a step back and made a sweeping gesture in Hibiki's direction. Thank you, Maestro. He turned back to Naruto and Kurama after bowing. We were doing a routine patrol with the Christina when we noticed a large fluctuation of Aether Nano over the ocean. So you need help taking out a monster? Why me and Kurama specifically? Naruto asked while tilting his head to the side and a puzzled look on his face. No, not a monster. Hibiki denied before Ichiya jumped forward and once again struck a pose, pointing at the strongest duo of Fairy Tail. We believe Tenrou Island still exists. All was silent for a few moments. Kurama staring blankly at the three while Naruto slowly straightened up, his hair overshadowing his eyes. And Maestro, and maybe a retray. In a flash of moment too fast for any of them to handle, Ichiya found himself lifted off the ground and held up by his collar, while staring down a glaring guild master. If this is a joke, then a retreat would be far from unreasonable. He growled out while Ichiya held his hands up rigidly in a surrendering gesture. Master Uzumaki! Please unhand Maestro. This isn't a joke. Rin cried out in alarm. Naruto! The guild hall doors blew open as the entirety of the guild rushed out, and saw the scene before them. Naruto, please let Ichiya go, Kanana said while running over to him, Mikao following her. Naruto let out a final growl and dropped the man onto his feet, flexing his fingers ominously. Repeat what you just said so that my guild can hear. He ordered in a tone hard enough that it made Kurama proud. So, fairly fearfully they did. Most of the guild having reactions similar to Naruto's, some of the more hot-blooded members like Romeo and Mikao lighting up purple flames. We swear it's true. We have the proof, Eve said while handing a lacrima to Naruto. Naruto studied it and sighed, a lot of the hostility sliding out of his posture. There definitely is a large fluctuation of Aether Nano. But if this isn't Tenrou, I swear on every member lost to Acnologia, your Christina will be turned into a pile of sawdust, understand? Crystal clear. Alright, he took a deep breath to stay calm and steady himself. Who wants to go sailing? He turned back to his guild with a small grin. Naruto is going to kill them, Alzak said while peering through a set of binoculars and still finding nothing, and their airship Biska added in helpfully. Ain't that the truth, Warren muttered. Levy, we get to see Levy. Jet and Droy happily cheered, Warren chewing them out for their premature celebration moments later. Holy shit! Is that a girl standing on the water? Max yelled while leaning forward and looking through his binoculars. His shout brought the inhabitants of the ship over while also peering through their own binoculars. Yeah. Who is that? She looks pretty young, Jet mumbled while staring. She's raising her arms. Suddenly they all had to brace as the ocean stirred like an angry giant, waves almost as large as the ship itself crashing against it, and rocking it heavily from side to side. Amidst this chaos though, they were treated to something beautiful. A few hundred meters from their boat, a golden glow began to emanate from beneath the churning sea, growing brighter and larger. And with a geyser of water into the air, the glowing object showed itself to be Tenrou Island, entrapped within a gigantic golden dome. The fairy tale symbol very predominantly shone on the side of it. What the fuck? Warren, Biska and Alzak mumbled while staring at the island which had just risen from the sea, seemingly on the whim of a small, blonde-haired girl. After getting over their shock they quickly sailed towards the ocean as the girl walked towards the shore. Within minutes they were docked and looking around. Max and the group made their way after her. Damn it! We're losing her! Warren yelled while trying to move faster, his legs screaming in agony. Jet! Go! Biska ordered, getting a nod from Jet as he suddenly took off at more than triple the group's speed. The girl took him along a path, matching pace so he never got closer but she never got further away. Up, right, left, right, down the slope. Where'd she go? She turned that corner and disappeared. Jet thought while sliding to a stop and looking around, his wild movements freezing at what he found. Jet! Did you find anything? Max asked as they finally caught up to him. They followed his sight and Droy made a squeaking gasp of a noise as they stared at the limp and half-buried form of Natsu Dragneel. Natsu, there's a new guildmaster? What the hell? Gramps is still the guildmaster. Natsu shouted angrily aboard the boat, right before it rocked again and he fell like a stone. And if we actually had died? Makarov asked while sitting cross-legged on a barrel. Naruto is really nice. Max said with an ecstatic grin. That may be so. But our guildmaster is still Master Makarov. I won't accept any changes, Urza said while inspecting a sword. I don't think Master Naruto will be that bad. He sounds nice. Mary Jane chirped happily. We don't like change, Urza said stubbornly. Now. I'm not going to fight him over this. I'm sure he is a perfectly capable guild master, Makarov said while looking at Magnolia slowly coming into view. And maybe he'll finally let me retire and pass on the mantle. Makarov internally cried, begging to every deity he knew that he would be allowed to retire as guild master. No change. Gray and Juvia parroted Urza. Stubborn children. Don't you dare take this from me. Nay, Droy, Jet, Levi asked, blinking and leaning back in shock as they pounced towards her like obedient dogs. Yes, Levi? They both asked in excitement. What's Master Naruto like? That feels weird to say, she muttered the last part. Master Naruto is super cool. He could beat all of us with his hands tied behind his back, Droy said while his very slight pot belly wobbled. Guildarts paid attention to his words, intrigued by the new guild master that had apparently appeared only hours after they had left for Tenrou. Yeah. He's got all sorts of really cool nicknames and stuff as well. Jet added in enthusiastically. Really? What sort of nicknames? Levi asked curiously. The fastest man in the world, the one-man army, the fairy god, the god of Requip. Urza snapped her head up to stare at the two with a surprised and piercing glare. And our personal favorite. Droy began with a theatrical edge. The man who tamed a demon. The silence on the ship was deafening to the members who hadn't been in stasis for the past 7 years. We've arrived at Magnolia. Alzak cheered with a sly grin on his face. And thus the guild made their way through the outskirts of Magnolia, the Tenrou team exploding with noise as they finally rebooted from their shock. And here we are. Our guild hall. Biska announced while gesturing to the large building. Let's show this demon tamer how Fairy Tail does greetings. Natsu said with a devilish grin. Natsu? What are you doing? Lucy asked suspiciously as he stalked towards the two double doors. Natsu, don't. Slam. He lowered his foot as the doors burst open, everyone in the guild hall turning to the door, including the 21-year-old currently surrounded by bowls and slurping down his current one while staring wide-eyed at the group. Naruto whyyyyyy. Biska moaned in embarrassment. That's Naruto. The guild hall was silent as the two groups stared each other down for a few seconds after Natsu's astonished shout. The sound of a bowl hitting the wooden floor and smashing broke the silence. The guild members who hadn't been in stasis for the past 7 years turning to Naruto and blinking in surprise. The 21-year-old was staring at the Tenrou group like it was his dream come true. Well, more specifically, he was staring at Urza. The look in his eyes similar to a child meeting his hero for the very first time. He hopped off his stool and slowly approached the group, right before leaning back as Natsu stomped towards him and pointed a finger in his face. Who the hell do you think you are? He slowly tilted his head to the side and raised an eyebrow, just waltzing in and taking Gramps' position from him. You don't deserve to be guild master. The air suddenly seemed to cool a little, not that Natsu noticed. Naruto's eyes had hardened slightly, and his head had straightened out a little bit. A few of the less hard-headed of the Tenrou group suddenly sensing the danger that Naruto possessed. The guild members who had been with Naruto for the entire 7 years though, they tensed, and a few tried to non-verbally tell Natsu to shut up. And while the pink-haired dragon slayer didn't catch the action, luckily Makarov did. So you're Naruto, huh? Makarov asked while walking up to Naruto calmly. Whoa! You're Makarov Dreyer. I can't believe I actually get to meet you, he said excitedly, sticking an arm out to the diminutive master. Nice to meet you, Naruto. Makarov greeted him cheerfully while shaking his hand in return. How's being the 5th master been? He asked his successor curiously. Not too bad. It's not a full-time gig cause I gotta do missions to keep us afloat, but the sound of heavy footsteps on the wooden floor caught everyone's attention, making the two guild masters look over curiously, and seeing Natsu having stomped over and glaring at Naruto. I challenge you to a fight. A series of groans were heard. A fight? Don't you want to get used to things? No way. Natsu yelled while spewing a tiny ball of fire, getting a surprised yelp from the blonde. You and me right now. I'll show you that Gramps is the only one allowed to be guild master. Natsu! You can't just go around challenging people like that. Lucy admonished him before turning an apologetic smile on Naruto. I'm so sorry. It's fine. I'll be happy to fight you, Tabeyo. He responded with a grin. Alright. Prepare to get your butt kicked. Natsu launched himself at the adult before hacking as he lurched like a pendulum thanks to Makarov's enlarged fist around his collar. Go outside, you brat. He growled before turning to his successor. Any good places nearby you don't mind destroying? That bad? You have no idea, brat, Makarov grumbled. Let go of me. Natsu yelled while thrashing in Makarov's grip. We can use Naruto's personal training grounds. Kanana suggested. Kanana, yeah. They just got here. You can't just show them my secret placé. Naruto whined while turning to the purple-haired girl. Many of the Tenrou team scowled at his childish nature, believing it to be further proof that he wasn't suited to being the guild master. Though of course, them being who they are, they also conveniently forgot about Makarov's own childishness. Don't be such a baby. You have like 7 different training grounds, Overfiore. She said dismissively. Really? Warren asked in surprise. Ugh. Damn it. Now I owe Max money. I bet that he only had 2. Macau groaned in annoyance while scratching the back of his head. Okay. Everyone follow me. Naruto cheered at the end while marching animatedly out of the guild hall. You know. I haven't seen Kurama since this morning. Where is he? Kanana asked as they reached the training ground. He decided to take a mission. Naruto said flippantly while lazily stretching. Ah, okay. Will Asuka be okay with us? Kanana asked. She should be fine. I'm sure Makarov will be fine protecting her. He said with a grin and a thumbs up. Asuka? Lucy asked while blinking and looking around for someone new. That's me. The 6-year-old girl chirped while running up to the busted blonde. Oh my god, you're adorable. Lucy squealed while bending down to ruffle Asuka's hair. I missed the wedding, Urza mumbled sadly, unheard to everyone else. You two ready to go? Makarov asked, ignoring the fawning over Asuka and Kana's bedding ring behind him. Yeah. Both of them said enthusiastically. You both know the rules. Begin. Natsu shot off like a rocket, complete with the burst of fire behind him as he launched himself towards the 5th guild master, screaming a war cry as he lit his fist on fire and cocked his arm back. There's this thing called telegraphing your attacks. I think you got a good grasp on it, Naruto said while leaning back to avoid the flaming fist. You'll never beat Master Naruto like that, Natsu. Romeo yelled out his support from the sidelines. Whose team are you even on? Naruto asked while comically waving his arms in the air. Natsu's. Romeo replied cheekily. Traitor. Naruto cried comically while hopping over a sweeping kick from Natsu. Thanks, Romeo. Natsu said as flickers of orange flame began to sprout from the corners of his lips. Fire dragon's roar. A flamethrower of fire surged towards the blonde, who only grinned confidently as he stared down the flames before it seemingly engulfed him. Did he really already go down? Gray asked in an already unimpressed tone. Look up, Gildarts told them with a little grin. As the charcoal black smoke began to recede, they saw Naruto balancing on a bow staff, with the bottom 3/4 of it having a few thin trails of smoke wafting off of it. The guild master grinning smugly. Not so high and mighty now, are you? He teased the dragon slayer. You're open! He screamed victoriously while striking the bottom of the staff to make it fall over. Makarov and Gildarts were easily able to watch the next few moments like it was in slow motion. Twisting his body as he fell, he gripped a portion of the smoking handle and swung his arm around while twisting his torso to add more power into his swing. In a burst of displaced air, the pink-haired teen shot past the guild members and struck a fairly thick tree, going through it, and 2 of the trees behind it before sliding to a stop along the ground, a deep trench leading to his unconscious body. Gaping eyes turned to stare at the blonde currently wiping some dust off his clothes, and gawking mouths flapped open and closed uselessly. Good warm-up, Natsu, Naruto said sincerely, flipping a thumbs up at the faint dust cloud and pile of fallen timber. My turn, Urza announced while walking forward, the silence soon turning into excited murmurs. Whoa! Urza Scarlet! Naruto fanboyed excitedly, rocking on the balls of his feet as his eyes sparkled high. So I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I just always wanted to meet you cause you were like my biggest inspire. You don't deserve to be guild master, Asian. What? Naruto asked, his excitement dying instantly. I don't trust you. Naruto flinched slightly at the declaration. I don't believe you are worthy to take master's place. In a practice maneuver, she dragged a sword out of her pocket dimension and pointed it at him, and I don't take kindly to you trying to usurp my magic from me. Urza, why? Bisca moaned in annoyance while face-palming. Just when I had forgotten this shit was an issue, Naruto growled while slouching over momentarily. I'm not taking your magic from you. I just happen to be the most compatible with Requip magic, he responded angrily. I'll show you how to truly use Requip magic, she said with a grin. Lucy, upon having a question pop into her head, walked over and politely tapped on Bisca's shoulder. The green-haired mother turning to the busted blonde and smiling slightly. Hey Lucy. Have a question? She asked kindly at seeing the way the girl's face slightly scrunched up. Yeah. So Naruto has the same magic as Urza? Sort of. I'll explain, she said at seeing the even more confused look in the girl's eyes. He uses Requip, just like Urza. But his style of Requip is different. He uses the warrior style of equip. Oh. So there's different styles? I remember Happy saying Urza used the knight back when I first joined. I thought it was just a nickname for her equip, she said with a sheepish laugh and smile. Yeah, Biska replied with a slight giggle. I mean, we've only ever discovered Urza's and Naruto's. But they're definitely different styles. Urza can equip armor, weapons and miscellaneous items. Naruto can only equip weapons and miscellaneous items. So Naruto is at a disadvantage? I mean, it would be really hard to win when facing someone whose magic is identical but better. At a disadvantage? Now, I wouldn't exactly say that, Biska said while stretching a finger and cocking her head while grinning. Huh? Lucy asked in confusion, giving the sniper a blank stare. Don't worry. You'll see, if you say so. Both women turned to the battle and saw Naruto bouncing on the balls of his feet, while staring intensely at Urza. Pausing his bouncing, he shakes his arms out and summons a plain katana, leveling it in an offensive stance, his feet sliding apart, and his knees bending as he crouched lower to the ground. Interesting choice, Mikao muttered to himself, while stroking his beard. Brat starting with an offensive stance? Must not want Urza to try and get the momentum of the fight early. Gildarts muttered to himself, while leaning back against the tree with his arms crossed. Urza meanwhile just transformed into her heart crew as armor, complete with sword, and pointed the blade at her opponent, one hand holding the handle of the blade and the other hand resting at her side. Though Naruto noticed that she had kept her bandages on. He took notice of that. You aren't going to take a stance? Naruto asked, a bit miffed that he was being so vastly underestimated. This is my stance, Urza said simply, with such conviction that Naruto's thoughts momentarily ground to a halt as he stared at her wide-eyed, immensely confused. Are you toying with me, Tebeo? He asked, a hint of anger seeping into his confused tone. No. This is my fighting stance, she said, glaring at him for getting angry at her. She wasn't just going to go all out straight away. He hadn't earned that. Oh, he mumbled before shaking his head and slipping back into his stance. Both of you ready? Makarov asked, getting nods from both fighters. Begin. Even after seeing the speed and strength he had when he had one-shot Natsu, many of the Tenrou team were still caught off guard by the explosive kickoff that Naruto began with. By the time that most of them were registering the cracked ground and its subsequent dust cloud, the blonde mage was already beginning his first attack on Urza. His first attack was a simple and easy-to-read thrust at her midsection. Her relaxed and admittedly sloppy and amateurish stance leaving her wide open to such an attack. He watched the way that her brown eyes widened in shock and saw the telltale signs of someone being caught off guard and realizing it. When she managed to spin out of the way of his blade by a hair's breadth, he dug his feet into the ground, beginning to rapidly slow down as his feet dug trenches in the dirt. From the corner of his eyes, he could see the bright light of Requip, one that was intimately familiar to the adult. As he finally ground to a halt, he kicked off with his left foot and spun on the ball of his right, his arm lashing out and sending the katana flying at Urza as simply as if he had chucked a throwing knife. Kicking back down with his left foot once he was properly facing the woman and shooting forward after his sword. Urza, now decked out in her flight armor, knocked the flying katana in the air with one of her short swords and readied herself for the opponent who suddenly seemed like much more of a threat than a mere few seconds ago. She twirled her swords in her hands before entering a stance which was broken through with minimal effort. Take me seriously, damn it! Naruto roared while lashing out with a kick, his foot pressing against the sleek metal of her swords. The two engaged in a flurry of blows, with Naruto being the clear superior of the two. Even to those who were having trouble following the action, Urza growled in action as she was tagged by yet another kick when she refused to allow herself to get disarmed and sacrificed her defense, her swords, and therefore arms as well, being knocked to the wayside before she was Sparta kicked back a fair few feet. With a furious growl she launched herself forward, appearing in a displacement of air a little bit above Naruto. Purgatory armor! A bright light encompassed her, and cerulean eyes watched the shape of twin swords seemingly morph into a large spiked mace which has held over her head. Why won't you use your armors? She yells in fury as the light disappears and shows the obsidian armor adorning her. With the change in armor came a sudden decrease in speed which Naruto used to his advantage, stepping and spinning to the side so his head was facing her, but his body was facing the mace as it swung mere inches from his chest. The mace hit the ground, and for the first time that anyone of fairy tale had ever seen, the power of the purgatory armor was given the spotlight. The mace hit the ground and created a small earthquake instantly, felling trees and causing people to fall over in a cacophony of screams and hollers. In a simultaneous gust of wind, boulders and chunks of earth split and rose around the central point of impact, and through all of this stood Naruto, the adult staring down his, surprisingly disappointing, idol with a hard glare, his hair and clothes waving in the wind but his body acting like the destruction around them wasn't even occurring. Is that all? He asks with a raised eyebrow and a grin, channeling his inner prankster. Use your armor, she orders while picking her mace up out of the cracked crater in the ground. Don't have any, he said while casually dodging her strikes. What do you mean you don't have any? She snarled while swinging a powerful strike at his head. My requip doesn't let me use armor, he answered simply. Your requip style is weaker? How did you get this strong? She asked as all the physical effort finally began to take its toll on her. I trained. I don't have magic armors to rely on like you. So I had to make my body something to rely on with a bright orange light. A dark metal mace appeared in his left hand. There was a golden flash of light, and suddenly Urza was crouched in her flight armor with her purgatory mace still clutched in her hands and used as a semi-crutch. In an explosive burst of speed, both fighters swung at each other with their maces. Naruto knocking Urza back thanks to her exhaustion and still unhealed injuries from acnologia. He was quick to chase her down, preparing a side swipe before a timer went off, making him pause and Urza look over in surprise. Since you two took so long, we put a time on this spar. I think it's safe to say that my successor is the victor, Makarov said with a wide grin, enjoying the show. What? No way. Urza was just about to kick that jerk's ass. Natsu yelled while stamping his foot, a large, pulsating bump on his head. Natsu! Shut up! Lucy admonished while slapping his bump, making the dragon slayer fall to his knees while clutching his head tightly in pain. Naruto grinned and wiped some sweat off his forehead, while allowing his mace to go back into his pocket dimension. With a nod of his head he extended his hand in Urza's direction, offering to help her to her feet from where she kneeled, panting in exhaustion. When she looked up, he was met with such a fearsome glare he actually retracted his hand slightly in shock. He watched as she slowly pushed herself to her feet with a grunt of exertion, her legs shaking in effort as he used her oversized mace as a crutch to help pull herself up. Urza, really? You don't have to. Shut up! She snapped, silencing him. You think you're better at requip than me? You're not. And you're even trying to steal Master's position. And with nary another word, Urza collapsed face first into the dirt with her armor being replaced for long red pants with orange flames at the bottom and tight bandages around her chest, and her mace disappeared, leaving Naruto standing frozen for a moment before a shuddering breath left his lips as his eyes were overshadowed by his hair. Feeling a hand on his shoulder, he looked up and saw Makarov, who stretched his arm to reach the adult's shoulder. Are you okay? Why, yeah, it hurt to hear my greatest idol scream at me so angrily. Ah, I understand. If it makes you feel any better, the only one you haven't won over yet are just a few of the more stubborn members, Makarov said with a cheeky grin. Hell, only them? I must be slacking, Naruto joked in return while quickly rubbing his eyes and grinning in return. Glad to see you bounce back quickly. Anyway, I reckon we're both equally banged up and exhausted right now, so what do you say? Huh? What are you talking about? Naruto asked in confusion as Makarov let go of his shoulder and took a good 2 or so dozen steps away before turning back to him. You and me. I can't just not test my successor now, can I? All the idle chatter in the guild ceased at those words. Stunned gazes leveled at the two. Seriously? Why not have me fight Gildarts or something? Don't you want to heal? Naruto asked, watching the diminutive man use Requip to change his clothes to his wizard saint clothing. You think I'd send Gildarts to fight you? He'd be crushed, Makarov teases. Come over here and say that. Gildarts yelled while waving his fist in the air. You're just too easy, Gildarts. He calls back before looking back at Naruto, the air suddenly shifting and feeling as if it were clumping and being dragged down by an imaginary force as both guild masters slid into stances. But really, I wouldn't disrespect the 5th guild master by not fighting them personally. Don't get discouraged if I crush you. Both guild masters' eyes flashed with power as their magic flooded out of them and began to warp the air around them and lift small objects into the air with gale-like force. In the midst of panic screams and cries, and girls desperately trying to keep their skirts down, Gildarts stepped forward, seemingly unaffected, and raised his hand, swinging it down so fast most of the members only saw a blur. Begin! Both masters stared down each other as their magic rose around them. Burnt orange magic swirling high and clashing against bright gold magic. The power like 2 brilliant bonfires. Both mages could feel the power behind the other's magic as they both prepared themselves for combat. Begin! Makarov dared not blink, remembering one of the titles that Jet and Droy had spoken of on the ship. The fastest man in the world. In a blur of motion he raised his hand and created a glowing shield using his light magic. Hearing the telltale sound of a blade hitting his shield and bouncing, he pulsed his magic and pushed his palm forward, the shield suddenly beginning to spin and moving forward while growing in size, seemingly clipping into the ground and burning anything it touched as it roared forward, stunning the crowd watching. Ah! Isn't this too far? Lucy cried while holding her skirt down with one hand and shielding her eyes with the other. Gigio leans against a tree stoically, watching the growing magic circle roar through the clearing towards the new guild master, hidden from sight, scoffing and closing his eyes as he believes it over already. His dragon-slaying magic feeling 3 sources of iron suddenly appear and go flying around the magic circle. Opening his eyes and looking at the battle, he felt a savage grin stretching his lips. So you aren't as weak as I thought. Makarov stopped feeding magic into his spell, his gray eyes blurring left and right as he took in the barely visible blurs curving around his slowly dissipating spell and the larger blur that darted to the right of it and began curving around the field. For now he had to focus on the 3 blurs, pushing off with a surprising amount of strength and backflipping with a slight spin. The 3 blurs whizzing past the aged master, as they ended up curving too far, all striking the ground with slight flips. The man sensed the powerful and pulsating energy of his successor closing in fast and knew that this would be a battle where his planning would need to be quick and doubtless no time for second guessing. It took the barest flaring of his magic to begin the spell. one of the spells that he had used so many times that it was reflex for him. As his feet hit the ground, he planted himself while swinging his right arm, the limb tearing up the earth as it grew and elongated to eclipse Naruto himself. The adult equipping a bow staff under his foot to launch himself into the air and dodge the massive hand, grinning as he realizes that Makarov was off balance. With a brief flash of light, his hands were gripping a red naginata. The pole, a deep mahogany with orange ribbon wrapped just below the blade and two sides of the ribbon flowing outwards as the black blade glinted in the sunlight. Flipping to gain momentum, he swung the naginata down and barely missed the elder guild master, who had dug his fingers into the ground and shortened his arm again, pulling him away from the blast zone. Pulling his blade out of the ground with practiced ease, he exhaled calmly while sliding into a kata stance with the grace of water and the speed of a hummingbird's wings. He flowed through the motions while keeping his blue eyes concentrated on his predecessor. While the actions may have looked showy and useless to an outsider, the fire which began to cover the blade quickly put a stop to that. Once the fire covered the entire blade, it began to spit off the blade in burning waves which surged across the clearing. The elder master lighting his hands up with dark purple magic circles, crossing his arms before throwing both arms to the side, a large circle of purple magic forming over his head as 3 pillars crashed down in a triangle around him. 3 pillar gods. The arcs of fire flew forward before seemingly hitting a force field and exploding like a fireball. A seemingly endless wave of them impacting the defense before Makarov and Naruto disappeared in a large cloud of black smoke. The guild members could hear multiple more impacts before the sound of glass shattering and a thud that shook the ground reached them. The sound of flying fire halting to the confusion of many of them. Why did he stop? Levi asked curiously. I'm not sure, I think we may find out though. Kanana replied while holding her chin. Well, Makarov's voice cut through the thick smoke, the next generation is certainly being left in capable hands. Now let's kick it up a notch. Heh. To be able to use a spell on top of such a defense. You really are a monster, Master Makarov. 2 surging sources of magic simultaneously blew the thick smoke away and made some of the members gag and cough as they accidentally inhaled some of it, their eyes opening back up to see the 2 combatants before them. Makarov stood among the rubble of one of his pillars, his breathing slightly heavier than usual but otherwise in the same physical condition as the beginning of the fight. His opponent, on the other hand, was flexing his left hand while rubbing his left shoulder, a small bit of smoke rising from between his fingers. Reckon you can handle more? Your blast was pretty weak to Bayo, Naruto teased while flowering his right hand to show a slightly singed and soot-covered mark on his shoulder. Makarov just grinned and lowered his stance, his body and clothing beginning to grow until he was slightly taller than Naruto himself. Take my words to heart, my boy, don't let your enemy transform if at all possible. Usually not pretty when you do. Makarov kicked off and blasted forward. Naruto narrowed his eyes and spun on his left heel in a counterclockwise rotation, his knee and back bending backwards until his left hand hit the ground. Burying his fingers into the ground, he flexed his whole body and used it to fling his right leg up and over into a curve, impacting Makarov right as he appeared in the space that Naruto had previously occupied and sending him flying into a tree or 4. Using the leftover momentum from his Bastardi's somersault, he pushed up with his right hand and allowed the momentum from his right leg to flip his body to land on his feet, in a small cloud of dust. There was a brief flash of light and his hands were filled with a pair of short swords that seemed to be made of silver and gleamed with an almost unnatural shine and polish. With near on no hesitation, he launched himself after Makarov while gripping the short swords tight. From the shadows and dust of the fallen trees, a laser of light magic burst forth, approaching Naruto at alarming speeds as the adult approached it. Going too fast to try and fix his flight path, he instead flipped the short sword in his left hand into a reverse grip and placed it so it was resting on his arm, the laser hitting the flat of the blade and reflecting off to the side, the opposite direction of the spectators, and easily burning clean through a few trees before Makarov cut it off. They heard a grunt from Makarov and looked over to see him holding a tree in each hand while standing tall, his eyes seemingly glowing with ethereal golden light. Holy crap, Gramps is super strong! Natsu cheered with sparkles in his eyes. Taking a lumbering step forward which cracked the ground under his weight, he heaved the trees forward and with a flex of his muscles he threw them both, one after the other, at the younger guild master. Said trees flying through the air and haphazardly rolling as they flew. Naruto chucked his blades up and fell forward into a somersault, his legs flailing out and kicking the pommel of each blade, sending them flying through gaps in the tree's flight path while rolling under one tree and shifting into a running stance, and leaping forward to jump off the second tree. The projectiles hitting the earth with a thundering crash and flipping dangerously through the air while sending shards of wood and splinters flying everywhere. Naruto cared little for this, focused instead on the titan before him, fist mid-motion and mere inches from his stomach. On pure reflex he felt his magic springing to life to form a Rasengan as quick as possible. Simultaneously the 2 mages struck each other, Naruto flying away like a ragdoll, while Makarov grunted and slid back 10 meters, his feet digging into the ground with all his power and digging trenches up to the middle of his calves, smoke wafting from his forearm. Crouching down low, he launched himself high into the air with a displacement of air and a cracking of earth beneath his feet. As he began to reach the apex of his flight, his magic roared to life and buffeted the guild members with another strong gust of wind, bringing both his arms together and lighting up a bright golden magic circle, a golden ball of light forming in front of it before it began to shower golden beams down on the recovering form of Naruto. The younger combatant crying out as he got forced back into the ground, and a cloud of dust rose from the impact zone, thick and multiplying as more and more golden blasts struck it. No way. I always knew Master Makarov was strong, but to be able to beat Master Naruto so much. Droy muttered in shock, his hands shaking and clammy. Geez. How strong is Master Makarov? Even Urza couldn't beat him. Lucy muttered in shock and all. Oh, be quiet. Mikao snapped, getting the muttering of the guild to quiet down. If this is all it took to take down Naruto, he never would have survived as long as he has now. No, now you get to see him at his most dangerous. What do you mean? Kana asked after taking a deep gulp of her alcohol. Just keep watching, Kinana said in a sing-song voice. An object shot out from the side of the dust cloud, the dust attempting to cling to it before simply being thrown to the side to reveal Naruto sporting a few more scrapes and bruises, but otherwise fine, as he rolled along the ground before managing to leverage himself to slide back on his feet. As he slid back, a large bludgeon composed of pure black metal and as tall as him appeared in his left hand, and a three-pronged kunai appeared in his right hand. Makarov shifting his arms to face Naruto's new position as the team threw his kunai at barely trackable speeds. With a pulse of magic, Makarov's rain of light activated again and threw energy blasts down at him even as he jerked his body to the side to dodge the kunai, the blade tearing through his shirt like it was wet paper and opening up a slight cut along his side. Now there were many horrifying events that Makarov had lived through and experienced over his many years of living, events such as seeing Levi and her team nailed to the tree that began the Fairy Phantom War, hearing about Natsu and Lucy going on an S-class mission by themselves, and most recently having to face down his old master and the Black Dragon of Apocalypse on Tenrou Island. But he would forever swear that feeling the flicker, disappearance, and reappearance of Naruto's magic during this first bout would forever stick with him as one of the worst scares he had ever felt during a battle. Barely managing to turn his head in time, he saw the form of Naruto somehow above him with his bludgeon swinging downward towards him. He tried to strengthen his body with magic in as short a time as he had only to receive the powerful blow for his efforts, his body rushing towards the ground with the sound of a gunshot and a shockwave. Naruto grabbing his kunai and throwing it towards the ground at top speed. The elderly mage struck the ground like an angel cast out of heaven, the earth cratering and compacting under the sheer force that his body struck it with. The force was so great that he bounced back into the air while his mouth opened on reflex, the wind forced out of him along with plenty of spittle. As he tried to gain his bearings, he missed the kunai was past him and dig itself into the ground at the bottom of the crater, the form of Naruto materializing with his body wound up in a battered stance, allowing him to utilize as much power as possible. Master! Many of the Tenrou group yelled in shock. Using as much power as possible, he struck the old guild master as he fell back down, his body shooting away with another shockwave and the sound of a gunshot. Makarov, the small part of his mind not racked in pain, felt himself impact the side of the crater and burrow through the ground mercilessly, eventually rising out of the ground and skipping along it a few times before sliding to a stop. Sensing a lull in the fight, Naruto used the opportunity to switch his bludgeon out for something more speed-friendly and catch his breath, a bead of sweat sliding down his cheek as he breathed in and out harshly. There were two rapid flashes of orange, and he stood holding a green-bladed jien in his right hand and three kunai in his left hand, his bruised and battered body sending twinges of pain to his brain as it realized it would have to keep fighting. Makarov meanwhile rose onto his hands and knees while hacking and coughing, wobbling to his feet before taking a deep breath and planting his feet as the shakiness seemed to leave him, the still giant man looking down at Naruto with a hard stare even while grinning, his back and ribs flaring in pain and his muscles burning from exertion. Well, I really never thought I'd see the day where teleportation would truly be achievable. You truly are remarkable, my boy. Alright, it's time to end this. Don't feel too bad when I win. Heh. Screw you, Naruto chuckled tiredly. Who gave you the right to be this strong? Seriously, even when injured you're keeping up with me. Experience, my boy. An experienced mage is 1,000 times deadlier than a powerful one. Noted. Alright, time to win this. That it is. In a blur of motion, Naruto launched himself forward, his left hand lashing out and throwing his three kunai in a curving pattern towards the elderly man, continuing his own approach. Makarov kept his hard stare on the boy as he wound his arm back and bulked it up slightly, both of their minds running at a mile a minute as they tried to plan out each other's moves. As Naruto got in range, Makarov swung at him, his newfound height allowing him to swing nearly straight down as Naruto prepared his arm for a slicing motion. The only warning Makarov had was the sudden change in the tilt of the blade before Naruto disappeared, but he had guessed that a head-on collision wasn't in Naruto's mind and continued his current plan of action. The chest-sized fist of the elderly guild master struck and buried itself into the ground with a thundering collision, the ground cracking just as he had hoped it would. As Naruto's blade inched ever closer to the giant, the man stood stock still, a large amount of magic swelling to his buried fist and worrying Naruto, despite him being on the cusp of victory. With a pulse of magic, the cracks in the ground began to a burning orange-red as the heat of the nearby area suddenly shot up. Naruto, feeling his body shift off balance as a shield of seemingly hard light surrounded Makarov, and caused his sword to rebound off it. The glow below him suddenly increased in intensity, and the faint roar of flames met his ears, causing his cerulean eyes to widen in shock. "You absolute fool-fwish!" Makarov grinned as fire rushed up and around his glowing bubble, eventually dissipating to show a melted and sizzling patch of land covered in charred grass. Sensing Naruto's magic in the crater his body had made moments before, he pushed his giant magic through his whole body, and felt himself growing bigger and bigger until he was roughly as big as when he fought Acnologia. With glowing eyes and a roar of power, he swung his gigantic fist down low, his knuckles scrapping along and tearing up the ground with ease. "You're strong, my boy. But how do you handle something like this?" Makarov thought with determination. Naruto felt as if he were struck by a train. A startled and pained yell escaped his lips as the giant fist continued its path into the air and finally stopped, allowing Naruto to fly high into the clouds with a powerful shockwave and a few drops of blood. Suddenly Makarov seized up and fell to his hands and knees while shrinking down to just above 10 foot tall. His breathing coming out in harsh pants, and sweat covering his form. Neither of them can handle much more of this, Levi realized before pushing through the guild to reach Gildarts. "You have to stop them, please, Levi, look. I know you're worried, but, Dad!" Kana snapped, "They're going to kill each other." She pointed towards the form of Makarov pushing himself to his feet once again despite his ragged breaths and coughing. "Girls, I appreciate the concern. But trust me, I know how much the old man can take. And this Naruto kid doesn't seem to be too far behind. They're definitely roughing each other up. But this battle will end far before death." Neither of them knew what to say at such a serious reply from the man currently watching the sky with a critical gaze and crossed arms. Almost everyone in the clearing could feel the burning star of magic that Naruto suddenly became, a gust of wind spreading the clouds and buffeting the small section of forest. Makarov also pulsing his magic as veins began to bulge in his forehead, the booming voice of Naruto managing to reach all of their ears. "Requip sacred art." "No way! Urza, do you know about this?" Droy asked the newly awoken girl who was merely staring at the sky numbly. "Gate of Babylon." The entire sky lit up dark orange. Wendy marveling at the beauty the sight caused while most of the guild was focusing on what sort of attack this Gate of Babylon even was. And their answer came in the form of the actual attack itself as it descended from the sky along with Naruto. Hundreds of weapons flying down towards the combatant who stared at the sky in shock before chuckling and shaking his head. "Just when I thought I couldn't be surprised anymore. Heh, I couldn't have asked for a better successor if I tried," he shouted excitedly, his form shrinking back down to his normal height but his magic aura not diminishing in the slightest. When the weapons were all roughly 2 meters from the ground, Makarov acted, his body flinging itself around at speeds even the strongest members of the guild had trouble following. The man jumping, vaulting and somersaulting through the entire field of weapons in a white blur as he used his magic to help augment his body, a gleeful cackle leaving his mouth as he did so, smartly avoiding the few gaps in the weapon placement, rightly believing them to be traps of some kind as he used the falling and fallen weapons as some sort of insane monkey gym. So gleeful was he that he completely forgot to keep track of his successor until he felt a pair of feet impact his stomach that sent him flying back. Makarov calculated his actions even as his right shoulder blade struck the pole of one of Naruto's hammers and caused him to spin wildly like a tornado of torn cloth and flesh, his hand lashing out and grabbing the pole of a buried spear and using it and his momentum to spin around it and fling himself back at the adult. Shooting forward, Naruto met him in a flurry of blows which didn't stay stationary for long. The two injured and exhausted mages flinging themselves around the weapon-laden field with nimbleness which astonished most of the guild members watching. Urza wondering herself if she would be able to pull something like this off with even half the success that Naruto did so. Meeting in the middle once again, the two guild masters struck each other with all their might, causing both of them to scream and fly back. Both adults striking the ground and bouncing a few times before sliding to a stop. Both of them managing to wobble onto their feet, their bodies shaking and shivering from exertion as sweat caked them from head to toe. Heh. Time to really finish this now, Naruto said as one of his last stockpiled weapons entered his hands. In his hands was a large bow with what appeared to be orange-red fur covering the front of it. A wooden carving of Kurama's head with his mouth open served as the arrow shelf and arrow rest. The arrow itself being quite strange. The arrow being what looked like a drill blade which seemed to lengthen and thin down as he drew the string back, looking far more like something that could be an arrow now. "Show me what you have, my boy." Makarov clapped his hands together, and 3 golden magic circles appeared in a triangle formation in front of him. Feeding all of his magic into the arrow, a deep red pulse of magic left the arrow and began to surround Naruto, the sound of lightning filling the air as it began to leave the arrow and the ground itself for meters around Naruto, striking many of the weapons surrounding him. His feet planted and eyes hard even as he panted and gasped for breath. Makarov exhaled and inhaled deeply as the veins in his forehead protruded even more, his clapped hands forming a triangle, a bright ball of pure white light forming between his palms and growing in size, moving forward as it did until it sat ahead of, but still in the middle of, the triangle of magic circles crackling and humming with energy. With a roar of effort from both combatants, their respective attacks were unleashed. A blindingly bright and startlingly large beam of energy leaving the triangle of magic circles and a drill arrow with enough magic packed into it that it glowed an ethereal red, and left a trail behind it while spinning exactly like a drill. The two attacks met exactly in the middle of the two combatants, causing a massive explosion as they did so, causing them to dig their feet into the ground and hunch down, shielding their eyes. The cries of distress from their guild members unable to reach their ears as Wendy, Romeo, and Levi nearly went flying from the sheer force of the wind. Eventually the wind died down, and the smoke cleared to show all the weapons beginning to disintegrate into orange wisps of light, Naruto no longer having the magic to keep them out of his requipped dimension. This left the full devastation to be seen to all of them. The cracked, melted, charred and cratered field which a few minutes ago had nearly been the picture of beauty, and on two sides of the field stood the hunched-over forms of the two masters. For a brief moment, everyone held their breaths, anticipating who would be the loser. With a shuddering groan and limp flop, Naruto fell down face first, impacting the ground with a muffled groan of pain and getting a tired and pained laugh from Makarov. Said elder tried to make his way over, his legs shaking and shivering but still able to hold his weight. Nearly the entire guild running over to try and help both of them. Naruto felt himself getting softly lifted out of the dirt and sat up, a pair of hands helping keep him sitting up and a soft hum filling the air as a pleasant coolness filled his body and made his body ache less. Opening his eyes he was met with the concerned eyes of Lucy and Wendy, the young dragon slayer helping to heal him. Cracking a small smile and coughing a bit he spoke, Hee. Hey. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. And nice to meet ya. Wendy couldn't help but giggle and Lucy cracked a gentle smile. I'm Lucy Heartfilia and this is Wendy Marvel. It's a pleasure to meet you Master Naruto. Hey. You called me Master he noted with a tired grin. I certainly think you deserved it Lucy responded with a giggle, helping keep him still for Wendy. Ha Hey. Did you see that? Gramps mopped the floor with ya. Now you gotta step down you phony. Natsu cheered while jumping from foot to foot. I will be doing no such thing Makarov huffed, getting Natsu to stop and whine. But you beat him fair and square Gramps, and he's in the beginning of his prime with plenty of room to grow. Makarov responded before walking over to Naruto. With the help of a wary Mira and Mikao, it seems that you've certainly never been training. He joked to the blonde adult. Heh. Got a pretty intense training partner. He quipped tiredly in return, groaning as Wendy accidentally hit a tender spot. I don't think I could leave the guild in any better hands than your own. Naruto looked up and saw the pride practically glowing from Makarov though I know this bunch can be quite rowdy and hard to handle so if you have some trouble never hesitate to ask. All four of the guild members helping them smiled or huffed indignantly. Will do. Though I guess I'll have to increase my training schedule if an old-timer like yourself could hand me my ass so easily. You could train for another 1,000 years and never beat me, brat. And despite the pain he knew it would cause him, and the likely scolding from the two girls helping him, Naruto bust out laughing. Makarov quick to join him despite Wendy's begging for them to stop. The guild was in full swing much like they had been 7 years ago. Cheers rang throughout the moderately sized guild hall as people knocked drinks together and laughed. In a mere 20 minutes it had turned into a party to be awed at, though probably from afar. It had yet to turn into one of the brawls that the guild was so famous for in their heyday but still wooden mugs flew around and one table even went flying high over everyone's heads as Elfman got too enthusiastic about something and hit it. Whoa! So Lamia Scale and Blue Pegasus aren't the #1 guilds? Wendy asked Romeo in surprise, getting a nod from the team. That's right it's a guild called Sabertooth who holds the top position. Shaverteeth? Natsu asked scratching his head. No. Sabertooth. Like the animal Romeo said, seeing Natsu finally get it they've surpassed both Lamia Scale and Blue Pegasus as the strongest guild. Never heard of them Gray muttered with crossed arms as he sat at the table. Not surprising, Max suddenly said from the table over, making them look over as he hung an arm over the back of his seat. They were a no-name back in the day but suddenly they changed guild masters and 5 newbies showed up and skyrocketed them to prestige. 5? Wow who knew only 5 mages could make that much of a change Lucy muttered in awe, blinking slowly. By the way, what's our rank? Wendy asked curiously. We're somewhere between rock bottom and middle of the pack Elzak supplied for the Tenrou group. Wise the Lucy began only to get cut off by Natsu. Ah. That sucks. Couldn't we have been rock bottom so we could work our way back up again? He whined before getting a slap over the head from the blonde. No you idiot. That's horrible. Actually the only reason we aren't rock bottom is probably because of Master Naruto Max supplied getting a few disgruntled huffs from the headstrong members. Really? Lucy asked in fascination, finally having an avenue to learn about the mysterious new Master. Why's that? Well he's pretty strong, all things considered. He joined when he was pretty small, a few years older than Wendy actually said. Girl blinked and pointed at herself in surprise. About 3 years after you guys disappeared he managed to become an S-class mage, which really helped with funds in our ranking. And even though people really look up to him, especially as one of the War 33, the rest of us and our reputation sorta held us down and stopped others from joining. Max scratched his cheek nervously at the self-reminder, as did another few of them. Why wait a minute? War 33? Natsu asked in surprise, slamming his hands down on the table. Oh right. Alzak exclaimed, remembering they would have no idea about it. You guys wouldn't know about the War 33 at all, would you? Of course not. Natsu yelled heatedly while shaking his hands. No. We haven't even heard of the name before now. Urza cut in coolly. Okay, so you guys know how we've been mentioning someone by the name of Kurama? Biska asked, deciding to take over the explanation after a moment of silence. Yeah, sort of curious. I thought you said no one else had joined. Gray replied curiously. Kurama is Naruto's partner. Sorta like you guys have Happy and Carla, Biska added in, looking at the two dragon slayers at the table. Oh. Okay. Wendy smiled and nodded, though Kurama is very much capable of combat. He usually uses the reverse of Master Makarov's giant magic to be able to fit into buildings and walk around normally. Lucy, Urza and Wendy all perked up at the information, wondering how big he was anyway. Kurama is a demon. Immediately the Tenrou members at the table were up in arms. What do you mean he's a? Do you have any idea how dangerous, Biska, he could kill? Guys. Mikau yelled out, bringing some semblance of calm back. Let Biska keep explaining before you go on a manhunt. Something about the way he said that made Wendy and Lucy blush in embarrassment and sit back down, while the others grumbled and did the same. Kurama's not one of Zerif's demons. It's fine, Biska started off, raising her hands in a placating gesture. Demon is more of a title than an actual species for him. He explained at once that he didn't really have a species. Essentially being a creature made of pure ether nano, or well chakra, as it used to be known. How much ether nano would you even need? Gray muttered to himself with wide eyes. But Kurama was sealed in some ruins, who was found by some dark mages. And other dark mages from all over the continent flocked to the ruins, believing if they were the ones to free him, they would receive his power. Yikes, Wendy muttered. The Magic Council sent out 33 mages that day to deal with the dark mages and either keep Kurama contained or secure him. Thus, the War 33 was created. Biska finished with a small smile. It's a title which is held with nearly as much esteem as the 10 wizard saints. No way! Natsu shouted in shock, falling off his chair. Well, it makes sense. It was no walk in the park. There was thousands of dark mages there. Mikau cut in. A cold chill swept through the table, freezing people solid as their eyes shrunk into mere pinpricks at the thought of facing down that many dark mages in open combat. Eep! Wendy audibly squeaked in fear and pulled her collar up while paling. Mikau turned his gaze to Urza. It wasn't a walk in the park among his allies either. Apparently a few people began outing him as a what was it again? Ah yes, a Titanian knockoff, Mikau explained, getting a second wide-eyed look from Urza. But anyways, I'll leave you kids to your chat. I need to go experience Myra's barmaid capabilities once more. Mikau walked off with a slight giggle, leaving the group practically frozen at the table. Hey, speaking of Master Naruto. Where is he? Lucy asked slowly, looking around for a peek of his sun-kissed blonde hair. Oh. Urza spoke, voice far off and gaze somewhat distant as she answered her teammate. Him and Master Makarov went to the old guild building. Wonder why they went there? Gray asked himself while leaning back and looking at the ceiling. Fairy tale, old guild hall. My, that is quite a story. Makarov chuckled as they walked into the old, dilapidated form of the building. I'm terribly sorry you had to go through such a thing though. From what I've heard, a war is a truly terrible place to be, let alone to participate in one. People throw that term around, but it didn't even last 24 hours. I personally like to call it the Great Skirmish, Naruto replied with a cheeky grin, getting a laugh from his predecessor. Ha! I suppose that's true. Though moving to another topic, what are your thoughts on my children? Those of us from Tenrou, Makarov asked jovially. It's amazing to meet you all. I'd originally joined the guild during your golden period. Apparently I was only a few hours behind you guys leaving for the island. Really? Well, that's a shame. I would have loved to meet you before everything that happened. So would I. He smiled and nodded his head as Makarov opened a set of doors to show a descending stone spiral staircase which they began walking down. Though admittedly, I might have ignored pretty much everyone if we had. He scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Oh? Why's that? The diminutive master asked with a raised eyebrow. I was the biggest Urza fanba in the world, he admitted in embarrassment, getting a bark of laughter from his predecessor. Oh. That's fantastic. He laughed, slapping his knee as he kept descending. Though you say have you grown out of that phase? For the most part one still look up to her. Most people use requip as a supplementary magic. But it was the only magic I had any connection to as a child. I tried other types of magic in hopes of forming another connection, but it didn't work out so well. I think I nearly burnt my hair off when a fireball backfired on me. He chuckled, the memory passing through his mind. So to hear that someone had become so strong using requip, I was ecstatic. I wanted to be just like her. Though there was one glaring difference. Your differing styles of requip? Makarov guessed, getting a nod in return. Yep. Though I didn't let that get to me. For long, with the help of a friend who sadly passed away, a moment of silence was held between them. I managed to find my way back onto my path. And came to Fairy Tale. Only to learn you guys were gone. As I grew up, my fanba enthusiasm sort of died down. Especially when I stopped getting called a Titanian knockoff. Makarov winced at the name, understanding at least partially why Naruto hated it so much. But I still sorta look up to her a little, so to meet her was awesome, but then to hear what she said, it hurt a little. I'm truly sorry, Naruto. I know it isn't much, but Urza can be stubborn. She's been getting better recently, but rolling with heavy punches is still something she can't do too well. She was always the requip user, and I was, to her at least, always the master. I think, you being both my successor and a strong requip user was too much for her to handle, so she backpedaled onto her stubbornness. She'll come around, they all will. Despite what they say. You're a member of Fairy Tail now, my boy. We look out for our own, just give them some time, okay? Yeah. Sure, Naruto responded with a slight grin and a snort before looking down at the staircase. Seriously, how long are these goddamn stairs? Not too much further now, Makarov teased while waggling his finger. Also, isn't what we're doing now technically illegal? This place was repossessed by the bank. It's fine. We'll have it back in no time anyways. Makarov waved him off dismissively. Kinda surprising no one knew about this place. Not really. I never told anyone. Why's that? Naruto asked as they finally reached a door, Makarov pulling it open with a loud creak and walking through. What greeted the two of them was a massive rectangular room, the ceiling being nearly unseen in the shadows from its height as magic torches all around the room lit up to bathe the room in a soft glow. On the floor, in the middle of a large circle, was a massive Fairy Tail Guild sign, and directly opposite to the door Makarov had just opened was a massive metal door nearly 4 times the height of Elfman. Holy crap. Wait till you see what's behind the door. Naruto looked over at Makarov as 2 of his fingers lit up with magic, and he began waving them around rapidly in what was very obviously some kind of spell. With a loud clicking sound, a massive magic circle formula appeared on the door before fading away. The massive door began to open of its own accord, slowly letting a strange light filter out of the room between the growing crack between the 2 doors. Suddenly Naruto felt it, a magic pressure far above what he had ever felt Kurama put out. It washed over him like a tidal wave, seeming to react to his presence, and forcing the doors wide open as pure ether nano crashed into the 2 mages and causing Naruto to break out into a cold sweat. What is this? Naruto asked in shock. This is our guild's greatest secret, Makarov said seriously as the light began to die down. The lumen histoire. The light began to die down, and the pressure of the magic began to fade as it dissipated into the air and material outside the room it had been trapped in for who knows how long, allowing both guild masters to see what was inside the room. What that's? Naruto turned to Makarov with a shocked look. Why is that here? Why even show it to me? Because this was entrusted to us by our first guild master, Mavis Vermilion. It is a secret handed down from guild master to guild master. Now I hand this knowledge to you, as Fairy Tail's 5th guild master. Fairy Tail, New Guild Hall, a few hours later. Why, you can't be serious. Natsu was panting, slightly hunched over as a thin sheen of sweat began to cover his body. Across from him stood Max, the young man lazily holding a hand out with a small but cocky grin on his face. You really think we've been sitting on our asses these 7 years? He asked in a teasing tone. No way. Natsu can't even beat Max. Wendy marveled in awe at the sight before her. But dumb TSSSS. I'm not giving up yet, damn it. Natsu launched himself. Max watched the Dragon Slayer approach him with a cool air. Natsu was no Naruto when it came to speed, and it showed. Planting his feet right before he collided with Max, he launched a flurry of jabs with his right arm, the man moving his upper body to dodge the jabs with what appeared to be minimal effort. When the flurry ended and Natsu instinctively jumped back a moment to wind up his next attack, Max took his opportunity. Raising an arm with his hand to the floor, sand began to seep out of the ground and surrounded the 2 fighters in a compact circle, beginning to swirl around violently. Huh! What's hap? Natsu began only to be cut off. Sand rebellion! Max shouted out as the sand suddenly, and nearly instantaneously, rushed inwards towards Natsu. The attack was almost like watching the sand version of an implosion, creating a large geyser of sand which sent Natsu flying with a panicked scream. He watched the pink-haired mage manage to spin his body to land on his feet, glaring determinedly at him. Fire Dragon's Max's eyes widened and he raised both arms, a large amount of sand following his action. Iron Fist. Sand wall. Natsu's flaming fist struck the wall of sand and caused a small shockwave to rustle the grass and sand to go flying away like a small shower. Natsu staring at Max in shock as Max grinned. I'm not the same as I was 7 years ago. Natsu began to roar in effort, his magic roaring into flames before exploding in a bonfire around him, scattering Max's sand wall and making the wizard slide back with his arms crossed over his face. Taking a moment to steady himself, he uncrossed his arms and looked up at the Dragon Slayer. Lightning Fire Dragon Mode. Max felt his arms go slack and his confident smile sliding off his face as Wendy and Lucy exclaimed in surprise. Bright orange fire crackled with bolts of lightning as Natsu grit his teeth and entered into a horse stance, his magic beginning to pool into a single point in his body. Huh! Max felt a drop of sweat roll down his forehead as he listed to the side. Lightning Flame Dragons ROERRR. Natsu stomped forward and released all of the magic he had pooled into his stomach, and boy did it show. Surging out of his mouth with all the force of a tidal wave hitting the coast, a massive beam of fire surrounded by spiraling lightning tore through the ground and trees with tremendous ease. The blast kicking up a massive cloud of dust which caused the onlookers to start wiping their eyes and coughing. Eventually, when everything had settled down, Max was leaning on one leg, blinking in surprise as a few locks of his hair floated away in the wind. Damn! Not as strong as before, Natsu muttered to himself, though everyone else heard. Since when can you do that whenever you want? Lucy asked in confusion, eyes wide and body slack. Now, I give up. You win. I'd be toast if that hit me, Max stuttered in fear, his hands raised in a weak surrender. Hi Che. Natsu cheered, planting his fist on his hips and turning to face the audience. Who's next? Only to receive 3 scared shrieks in return. With another victorious laugh, Natsu tilted his head back only for his eyes to roll up and his body to slump forward, his chin smacking the ground with an unforgiving crack. I knew it, Lucy deadpanned. Knowing her partner would be fine, he used way too much magic. You're not wrong. But we got another problem. Both girls looked up and shouted in surprise at the sight of Grace sitting on a rock above them, other than those that are already monsters like Laxus and Gildarts. The rest of us haven't kept pace with the times. That's true. Natsu even had a hard time against Max, Lucy muttered, holding her chin as Wendy nodded in agreement. I wonder if there's a way to increase your power in one big shot? Happy wondered aloud, Grace suddenly clicking his fingers as an idea came to mind. Magnolia Forest, Porla Yusuka's house. The elderly woman stared down the small group of fairy tale wizards with narrowed eyes, a cold, calculating glint flying through them. Gray coughed nervously into his fist before speaking. So we were wondering, Slam, go home. Fairy tale, new guild hall. So as the 5th guild master, I would like to officially reinstate Laxus Dreyer as a member of Fairy Tale, Naruto declared with a large grin, getting cheers from the Raijin tribe and thanks from all of them. Naruto chuckled and scratched the back of his head. I mean, how could I not? Master Makarov told me about what Laxus did on Tenrou. I couldn't just let someone who embodies Fairy Tale so much just slip away. Laxus felt his vision tilting downwards as his surprise began to fade away, finally registering in his mind, his eye wavering for a moment before hardening with resolve as his fists clenched slightly. This time. I'll do it right this time. Oh. Gildarts also wanted me to give this to Kana? Naruto asked, holding up an envelope and looking around for the hardcore alcoholic. Yo! She cried as she walked over, once again only clad in a bra on her upper half as she took it from him, and opened it. She got halfway through the letter before pulling out a small card and with a victorious smile, ripped it in half. The guild all looking at her in surprise or confusion. Who does that old man think he is? She suddenly spoke aloud. I told him I wanted to keep things the way they were. I don't need this stupid phone call card. That's what it was. Most of the guild shouted in surprise and shock, knowing how hard it was to keep in contact with Gildarts on even the best of occasions. Oh, and Naruto? The man blinked and focused in at hearing the girl call out his name. Gildarts had one request of you. He did? What was it? Kana held the letter haphazardly in her hand and closed her eyes, grinning cheekily even as she recited the words he had written down. Naruto, I won't be around much. So I just got one thing to request. Help Fairy Tale back to the top. Show the world our heart, got it? Naruto could feel the weight behind those words, but unlike the weight when he had been given missions, which felt suffocating and restrictive, weighing on his every thought and muscle, this weight felt reassuring, helpful. With a bright grin he pumped his fist in the air. We'll climb right back to the top. And there isn't a thing that'll get in our way, Databeo. The entire guild cheered, even those that weren't the most supportive of Naruto, fists pumping up all over the guild hall. Though those cheers soon turned to laughs as Naruto seemed to be physically crushed by the realization of what he had said, the young man falling to the floor with a comically large amount of tears streaming from his eyes. A few minutes later the guild had once again devolved into a small-scale party, with groups of people having split up and amicably chatting. Geez, there goes Gildarts. Giving us such a lofty goal, Warren sighed. How so? Improvement sounds like an excellent goal, Urza commented while holding out a hand. If it were 7 years ago. But things are different now, Max sighed. Like, forget Sabretooth. Just Lamia and Pegasus would be enough trouble. They're completely different from how they were 7 years ago, Alzak commented while shrugging his shoulders. They're definitely top-tier guilds now, Biska added on. Strong guilds. Asuka cheered with a big smile. And even with the Tenrou group back, they're exactly the same as 7 years ago, Kanana deadpanned. Well, I suppose it would take us some time to regain our strength. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, Urza replied, getting hums of agreement from the others. Well, it's been 7 years and I'm not waiting 7 more. Romeo shouted, having been eavesdropping as he jumped onto a table. Romeo! Mikao admonished his son with a slight glare. If you want to become the #1 guild quick, there's only one way. He cheered to Urza, holding up one finger for emphasis, getting a clueless tilt of her head from the girl. No way! The rest of the guild, who hadn't been on Tenrou, shouted in shock. The rest of the guild could practically be seen with question marks over their heads as they looked around cluelessly. Romeo, are you crazy? We've already decided we're never going to participate again. Mikao cried out, stepping towards his son. Fourth Master, what is he talking about? Makarov asked after finishing yet another jug of alcohol. Oh, well, you see, Mikao began to explain. The Tenrou Island group all listening in, enraptured by his words. Meanwhile Naruto sighed and sipped his drink, staring at the ceiling as Kanana patted his forehead while walking past, wearing a sympathetic smile on her face at the reminder of the hell he would be going through in just a few days' time. Natsu and company. I'm glad you got something from your mother, Wendy. I'm sure you'll make her proud, Lucy said with a bright grin, getting one in turn from the young girl as Natsu slammed open the doors carelessly. We're going to enter. Romeo growled up at his father, who growled back. We're not going to enter. Mikau snapped back, the two of them quickly devolving into a yes, no back and forth. We're back. Natsu exclaimed neutrally. Oh hey. You guys get any medicine? Max asked with a snort as he turned away from the argument. Only Wendy the Dragon Slayer replied flippantly, getting a slight giggle from the girl. You can't decide. You aren't the master. Romeo snapped, drawing in everyone's attention. I'm saying this as a member of the guild, you brat. Mikau responded in kind. What are they even arguing about? Gray asked with a sweat drop. Just seems like a father-son argument to me, Carla responded with a shrug. All those in favor of not going, nay. Mikau yelled, raising his hand up high, ramrod straight, as did the rest of the non-Tenrou members. I'm willing to do a lot of things, but not that, Alzak muttered. It makes us ashamed to even be alive, Biska added on, Asuka giggling from Naruto's lap at her parents. But this time we have the Tenrou members. We've got Big Bro Natsu and Big Sis Urza. Said Mage blinked in surprise. Big Sis Urza? She thought in surprise. But they've also lost 7 years. Warren cried with tears flowing down his face, anime style. You're just perfect how you are, Levi. Don't worry. Jet and Droy praised their crush in the background, the girl just clasping her hands together nervously. Everyone keeps arguing about not entering. Not entering what? Natsu asked. Is it Lucy's bathroom after she's taken a? Don't talk about that in public, idiot. Lucy cried with an embarrassed blush while stomping on his foot. While you were gone. The country created a festival to decide the top guild in Fiori, Romeo began. Whoa! That sounds so cool. Natsu and Happy cheered in unison. All the guilds gather for a big magic competition. And it's called the Grand Magic Games. The 10 members seemed awed by the boys' impromptu speech, though the rest of the members just seemed depressed and slightly annoyed. Of course, if we win, Urza spoke with a confident grin, then we become the top guild once again. All the members of her team cheered excitedly. I don't think, as we are now, we could win at all, Makarov grumbled while stroking his mustache. The winner gets 30 million jewels, Romeo added in with a manipulative grin. We're entering the tournament. Makarov cheered while pointing to the sky. Master! Mikau cried in betrayal. We'll beat them all one by one. Makarov grinned with fighting lust as he mimed out punching and blocking. I'm all fired up. Natsu shouted excitedly. Shut up. Jet and Droy responded with aggravated snarls. When does it start? Natsu asked. In 3 months. Romeo informed him happily, internally smiling at how well he had the Tenrou group around his pinky. That's plenty of time. I'll be all up to speed by then. Natsu exclaimed, punching a flaming fist into his palm while all the Tenrou members began to discuss their plans to grow stronger. It's not exactly the knock-em-up Natsu's thinking of, though, Biska deadpanned. It's not. Natsu shouted, heartbroken at the news. Well, you see, we've already decided to join, so anything you say is useless. Makarov crowed with what was very obviously a greedy look on his face. Big brother. Aren't you the guild master, though? Asuka's voice cut through the guild hall like a hot knife through butter. Every single person in the guild hall froze and slowly, almost robotically in some cases, turned to face the origin of the remark. Seeing Asuka sitting in Naruto's lap with the young man still staring at the ceiling while thumb-warring with the little girl, obviously going easy on her. Yes, Asuka. He brought his head forward and leveled his gaze at the guild, a cold thrill going through all of them like some invisible wave, though it doesn't seem to mean much apparently. Naruto, we really didn't mean, Mikau stammered in obvious horror and embarrassment. So let's say we enter. There were mages that 7 years ago were as strong as some of you. What do you plan on doing in 3 months that would allow you to catch up? Naruto asked the 10 members coolly, getting hopeful looks from the other members. Lucy stammered out. I have no doubt many of you, especially the A and S ranks, could reach the new average or even higher. But wizard saints enter this competition. People who are called monsters nowadays enter this competition. Can you get stronger than them in 3 months? Of course we can. We'll train twice, no 3 times, as hard as they ever have. Natsu exclaimed while slamming his knuckles together. Even the ones that have been breaking themselves for these 7 years? The ones who have tortured themselves to get stronger? Look. I have no doubt we would do well, but winning is out of the question. It hurts me to say it, but we have no chance of winning. Not with just 3 months of training, he spoke, never stopping his thumb wars with the little girl in his lap. Who the hell are you to say what we can and can't do? Natsu asked while angrily stomping his foot repeatedly. Be but with you here. Romeo tried to rectify the situation with you and Kurama competing as well. Romeo. You know why I can't. Guild masters can't compete, he responded, getting startled flinches from the 10 members. Then what about Master Makarov? Body's not what it used to be, brat. I'm just happy to watch from the sidelines, Makarov replied with a cheeky grin while downing a mug of rum. Then what if you make Master Makarov the guild master again? Romeo was desperate now. Yeah. Make Gramps the guild master again. Natsu agreed with Romeo, glaring slightly at the blonde. Naruto sighed and leant back in his chair, looking at the ceiling again. You guys are almost as bad as Minerva, he mumbled under his breath, the dragon slayers all looking at him in confusion. Look. It isn't against the rules, but all the guilds have an unspoken agreement no changing guild masters just to enter the tournament. You really think I'm going to risk the backlash if that happens? Or let Makarov deal with the backlash? And I know, trust me I do, that you guys don't like me. At least not as guild master. Lucy, Wendy and Urza felt guilt rip through them, the first two guilty about initially joining the outcry without even thinking, and Urza guilty over how angry she had gotten a few days ago. But even if you don't like me, I like you guys. A wave of surprise went through the building and I'm only looking out for you. This tournament crushed Alzak, Biska and Jet the last time they went. It took them weeks to recover from the mental shock of it all. Everyone looked at the three mentioned with worried gazes. But if you all want to join, go ahead. I won't stop you, just don't hurt yourselves. Please. He gently moved Asuka off his lap, the girl hugging his leg before running over to her parents. The fifth guild master made his way out of the guild hall silently, the members parting almost like the Red Sea to Moses as he did so. The sound of the door closing behind him was practically deafening. The silence was broken by Mikao sighing and resting his face in his hands. Kanana, can you? I'm on it, don't worry, she said quickly, putting down the glass she was cleaning and rushing out the door after Naruto. Makarov sighed and put his mug down. Didn't take us very long to mess something up this time, did it? Everyone turned to look at him as he looked up at them seriously. I think we should do something to make it up to him, shouldn't we? A smile stretched his lips and made his mustache seem to spike up a little. I don't think anything less than first place will suffice. Don't you all? Yeah. Secret training site. A day later, Naruto sighed and felt a soft smile adorned his features, placing a hand on his hip as he stared down the calm woman before him, watching the tightly compacted ball of magic between her ajar hands fluctuate in shape and brightness. Looking down at the ground before him, he saw a small pebble by his foot. Quick as lightning, he maneuvered his foot under the pebble and flicked it up, grabbing it with his free hand and throwing it at the woman. The pebble whistled through the air, breaking the woman's concentration and making her open her eyes right before it struck her between the eyes, making her yelp in surprise and fall over. Seeing her raise her hand and glare at him, he tilted his head to the side, hearing a small explosion on a tree directly behind him. The woman in question was Minerva Orland, the Queen of Sabertooth, and his current training partner. Minerva currently growling at the teasing grin on his face and the giggle that left his mouth that could only be caused by a well-executed prank. Now you have a third eye. You're going to regret that, Uzumaki, she growled, though he could tell it was missing much of the heat she would put into it when talking to anyone else. Perhaps, but I could always cancel this training trip, couldn't I? You're the one who gave me that IOU and promised to do whatever I told you to in exchange. Naruto chuckled and shrugged. You helped me, I help you. You did help me with that magic draining staff incident. I'm still ashamed to say that I know you after watching you fall to that. How was I supposed to know it drained your magic? Naruto asked in an affronted tone. It was called the Staff of Draining. Minerva deadpanned while placing a hand on her hip and cocking it, one eyebrow raised. Obviously unimpressed. Well, look who's all fancy and reads the mission request. Naruto chuckled sarcastically. It wasn't on the mission request. I just put 2 and 2 together, something you didn't seem to be able to. Did you not read the mission request? She narrowed her eyes in anger. Oh hey. 3 months of training have arrived. Would you believe that timing? Naruto hurriedly said while clapping his hands together. No. You do not get to get out of this that easy, gag. Minerva stumbled back holding her neck while Naruto stood in a punching form. Training begins, he shouted in a hurried voice before launching himself at her. What if Naruto joins Fairy Tail after Tenrou Island? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.